In the year 2710, three human males board an experimental faster-than-light ship bound for the denobulan homeworld. Their mission: to breed with alien females and save an entire species from extinction. The denobulan High Council's desperate plea echoes through the halls of Earth's government. A catastrophic event has decimated their planet, leaving only 50,000 females of reproductive age. Their birth rates have plummeted due to genetic damage, pushing them to the brink of annihilation. In a controversial move, Earth agrees to send 3 men to participate in an unprecedented breeding program. Roger Howard, a 32-year-old geneticist, steps off the ship onto alien soil. The gravity feels different. The air carries unfamiliar scents. He's immediately separated from his fellow humans: Marcus Bennett, a 28-year-old xenobiologist, and Alejandro Ruiz, a 35-year-old military veteran. Each man is whisked away to a different breeding facility across the planet. Roger finds himself at the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center. The stark white buildings loom before him, a testament to the clinical nature of his task. He meets his denobulan liaison, Willa. Her alien features, ridged forehead and distinctive facial markings, remind him of the vast differences between their species. Willa's voice trembles as she explains the situation. Our species faces extinction. You and your compatriots are our last hope. The weight of responsibility settles on Roger's shoulders. He's no longer just a scientist. He's a potential savior of an alien race. As Roger acclimates to the alien environment, he notices the rising tensions. Some denobulans look at him with hope shining in their eyes, while others regard him with suspicion and resentment. The pressure is palpable. He overhears whispers in the corridors, debates about the ethics of their plan, fears of diluting the denobulan genome. Back on Earth, conservative factions protest against the mission. They argue against contaminating the human genetic pool. The government stands firm, recognizing the potential diplomatic and scientific benefits of this interspecies cooperation. Roger immerses himself in preparation for the breeding program. He studies denobulan physiology, attends cultural briefings, and undergoes medical examinations. The first breeding attempts loom on the horizon, filling him with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. As he lies awake in his quarters, Roger contemplates the enormity of his task. The fate of an entire alien race rests on his ability to produce viable hybrid offspring. The potential consequences for both species weigh heavily on his mind. Will this unprecedented experiment lead to salvation or further complications? In the heart of an alien world, 3 human men stand at the crossroads of 2 species' futures. Their bodies become the battleground for survival, their genes the key to unlocking a new hybrid race. As the breeding program begins, only time will tell if humanity's contribution will be enough to save the denobulans from the brink of extinction. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, Roger Howard found himself staring out the window of his quarters at the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center. The weight of his mission pressed heavily upon him, but a new day brought fresh persistence. A soft chime at his door announced the arrival of Willa, his denobulan liaison. As she entered, Roger couldn't help but notice the way the morning light played across her iridescent skin, highlighting the delicate ridges on her forehead. "Good morning, Dr. Howard," Willa greeted him, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness. "Are you ready to begin today's work?" Roger nodded, forcing himself to maintain a professional demeanor despite the growing attraction he felt towards her. "Of course, Willa. Let's head to the lab." As they walked through the stark white corridors, Roger observed the mix of hope and suspicion in the eyes of passing denobulans. The pressure of their expectations was palpable. In the lab, Roger and Willa pored over holographic displays of denobulan and human DNA sequences. Hours passed as they discussed the intricacies of interspecies reproduction, their heads bent close together over the glowing projections. "The compatibility issues are more complex than we initially thought," Roger mused, running a hand through his hair. but I believe we're making progress." Willa's eyes lit up with excitement. "Your insights are invaluable, Roger. I've never met anyone with such a deep understanding of xenogenetics." Their gazes locked for a moment, and Roger felt a flutter in his chest. He quickly looked away, reminding himself of the gravity of their task. Meanwhile, at the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett faced a crisis. He stood in a sterile medical bay, watching as yet another denobulan female was treated for a severe allergic reaction. Dr. Lyra, a denobulan geneticist recently assigned to assist him, approached with a concerned expression. "This is the third case this week, Dr. Bennett. We need to find a solution quickly." Marcus nodded grimly. "Agreed. Let's review the data again. There must be something we're missing." As they worked side by side, Marcus couldn't help but admire Dr. Lyra's brilliance and dedication. Her quick mind and insightful observations were a perfect complement to his own expertise. In the Southern Islands breeding facility, Alejandro Ruiz faced a different challenge. He sat in a circular room, surrounded by skeptical denobulan females. Their traditional garments and wary expressions made him acutely aware of the cultural chasm between them. Zara, his cultural liaison, stood beside him, translating his words and helping to bridge the gap. "Alejandro wishes to learn about your customs and traditions," she explained to the group. "He understands the importance of respecting your ways." One of the older denobulans spoke up, her voice thick with suspicion. "How can we trust him with our genetic future? He is an alien and outsider." Alejandro leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "I may be different, but I share your goal, the survival of your species. I'm here to help, not to impose." Zara translated his words, adding her own observation. "I have seen Alejandro's sincerity. He truly wishes to understand and honor our culture." As the days passed, the three men settled into their roles, each facing unique challenges. Unbeknownst to them, events on Earth were unfolding that would soon impact their mission. In the bustling capital of the United Earth Government, protesters gathered outside the Interstellar Relations Building. Signs bobbed above the crowd, bearing slogans like "Keep Humanity Pure" and "No Alien Hybrids." Inside, a team of diplomats and scientists prepared for their journey to the denobulan homeworld. Dr. Elena Kovacs, a renowned xenoanthropologist, reviewed her notes on denobulan culture. Beside her, Commander John Blackwood studied security protocols for the mission. "We need to ensure the safety of our people," Blackwood stated firmly. "The situation on Denobula is potentially volatile." Dr. Kovacs nodded in agreement. "And we must tread carefully. The cultural implications of this mission are enormous." As the Earth team made their final preparations, a shadow loomed over the denobulan breeding facilities. In a dimly lit chamber on the outskirts of the capital, Vox, a charismatic denobulan male, addressed a group of his followers. "Our species stands on the brink of extinction." Vox's voice rang out, filled with passion and anger. "And what is the solution offered by our leaders? To pollute our genetic lineage with alien DNA." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Vox's eyes gleamed with fervor as he continued. "We cannot allow this abomination to continue. We must act to preserve the purity of our people." As Vox's radical faction plotted in secret, Roger Howard made a breakthrough in his research. He stared at the holographic display, his heart racing with excitement. "Willa, look at this," he called out. "I think I've found a way to enhance the compatibility between our DNA structures." Willa hurried over, her eyes widening as she examined the data. "Roger, this is incredible. This could increase our chances of successful hybridization exponentially." In their shared moment of triumph, Roger and Willa found themselves drawing closer. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. As their eyes met, the professional boundaries they had maintained began to blur. Unaware of the forces aligning against them, the three human men and their denobulan counterparts continued their work, each grappling with their own challenges and growing attachments. The fate of two species hung in the balance, as both hope and danger loomed on the horizon. As dawn broke over the alien landscape, Roger Howard found himself staring out the window of his quarters at the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center. The weight of his mission pressed heavily upon him, but a new day brought fresh perseverance. The soft chime of his door interrupted his reverie. Willa entered, her iridescent skin catching the morning light. "Good morning, Dr. Howard," she greeted, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Are you ready to begin today's work?" Roger nodded, pushing aside the growing attraction he felt towards her. "Of course, Willa. Let's head to the lab." In the sterile confines of the laboratory, Roger and Willa immersed themselves in their work. Holographic displays of DNA sequences floated before them, a dizzying array of genetic information. Hours passed as they discussed the intricacies of interspecies reproduction, their heads bent close together over the glowing projections. "The compatibility issues are more complex than we initially thought," Roger mused, running a hand through his hair. "But I believe we're making progress." Willa's eyes lit up with excitement. "Your insights are invaluable, Roger. I've never met anyone with such a deep understanding of xenogenetics." Their gazes locked for a moment, and Roger felt a flutter in his chest. He quickly looked away, reminding himself of the gravity of their task. As the days wore on, Roger's dedication paid off. Staring at the holographic display one evening, his heart raced with excitement. "Willa, look at this," he called out. "I think I've found a way to enhance the compatibility between our DNA structures." Willa hurried over, her eyes widening as she examined the data. "Roger, this is incredible. This could increase our chances of successful hybridization exponentially." In their shared moment of triumph, Roger and Willa found themselves drawing closer. The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. As their eyes met, the professional boundaries they had maintained began to blur. Caught up in the euphoria of their breakthrough, Roger leaned in, his lips meeting Willa's in a passionate kiss. The sensation was alien yet exhilarating, her skin cool and smooth against his. For a moment, all thoughts of their mission faded away, replaced by the intensity of their connection. Meanwhile, at the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett faced a crisis of his own. He stood in a sterile medical bay, watching as yet another denobulan female was treated for a severe allergic reaction. Dr. Lyra, his recently assigned denobulan assistant, approached with a concerned expression. "This is the third case this week, Dr. Bennett. We need to find a solution quickly." Marcus nodded grimly. "Agreed. Let's review the data again. There must be something we're missing." As they worked side by side, Marcus couldn't help but admire Dr. Lyra's brilliance and dedication. Her quick mind and insightful observations were a perfect complement to his own expertise. Their tireless efforts paid off when they made a critical discovery. Marcus pointed excitedly at a complex molecular structure displayed on their screen. "Look here, Lyra. This protein in human DNA. It's triggering the adverse response in denobulan physiology." Lyra's eyes widened with realization. "Of course, if we can develop a method to neutralize this protein, we could potentially eliminate the allergic reactions altogether," Marcus finished, his voice filled with excitement. Their shared enthusiasm brought them closer, and as they worked late into the night, the air grew thick with unspoken tension. Exhausted but exhilarated by their progress, Marcus found himself drawn to Lyra in a way he hadn't anticipated. In a moment of shared vulnerability, their professional facade crumbled. Marcus reached out, gently tracing the ridges on Lyra's forehead. She leaned into his touch, her breath quickening. Their lips met in a tender, exploratory kiss, bridging the gap between their species in a way neither had imagined possible. At the Southern Islands breeding facility, Alejandro Ruiz faced a different set of challenges. He sat in a circular room, surrounded by skeptical denobulan females. Their traditional garments and wary expressions made him acutely aware of the cultural chasm between them. Zara, his cultural liaison, stood beside him, translating his words and helping to bridge the gap. Alejandro wishes to learn about your customs and traditions, she explained to the group. He understands the importance of respecting your ways. One of the older denobulans spoke up, her voice thick with suspicion. How can we trust him with our genetic future? He is an alien and outsider. Alejandro leaned forward, his eyes earnest. I may be different, but I share your goal, the survival of your species. I'm here to help, not to impose. Zara translated his words, adding her own observation. I have seen Alejandro's sincerity. He truly wishes to understand and honor our culture. Over the following weeks, Alejandro's patience and genuine interest in denobulan customs began to pay off. He gained the trust of a group of traditional denobulan females, impressing even Zara with his dedication. One evening, Zara approached Alejandro with a proposition. There is a sacred bonding ritual I believe you should experience, she explained, her eyes shining with an unfamiliar intensity. It will help you understand our people on a deeper level. Alejandro agreed, curious and eager to learn. As Zara guided him through the ritual, involving intimate touches and shared breath, he felt a powerful connection forming between them. The air grew heavy with unspoken desire as their hands explored unfamiliar contours and their breath mingled in the sacred patterns of the ritual. As these events unfolded across the denobulan homeworld, a new complication arose. The Earth diplomatic team, led by Dr. Elena Kovacs and Commander John Blackwood, arrived to assess the progress of the breeding program. Dr. Kovacs, during her visit to the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, was particularly intrigued by Marcus and Lyra's work on neutralizing the allergic reactions. This could have far-reaching implications for interspecies medical treatments, she mused, deciding to extend her stay to study their findings further. Commander Blackwood, meanwhile, sensed undercurrents of hostility during his tour of the Southern Islands breeding facility. His military training alerted him to signs of unrest among some of the denobulan staff, though he couldn't yet pinpoint the source of the tension. Unknown to all, Vox's radical faction was intensifying its plans to sabotage the breeding program. They had infiltrated key positions within each facility, gathering intelligence and planting operatives. Vox himself focused on the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center, seeing Roger Howard's recent breakthrough as the most immediate threat to their cause. As night fell over the alien world, the three human men found themselves more deeply entwined with their denobulan counterparts than they had ever anticipated. The lines between duty and desire blurred, raising questions about the ethical implications of their growing attachments. Meanwhile, the threat posed by Vox's faction loomed larger, with the potential to disrupt not only the breeding program, but also the fragile peace between humans and denobulans. In the quiet hours before dawn, as Roger lay awake beside a sleeping Willa, Marcus pored over genetic data with Lyra at his side. And Alejandro contemplated the profound connection he'd formed with Zara. None of them could have predicted the challenges that awaited them in the days to come. The calm before the storm was shattered in an instant. As the first rays of dawn began to creep over the horizon, alarms blared throughout the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center. Roger Howard jolted awake, his heart racing as he realized the gravity of the situation. "Willa, wake up," he shouted, shaking his denobulan partner. "Something's wrong." Before Willa could respond, the lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. The familiar hum of machinery fell silent, replaced by shouts of confusion echoing through the corridors. "We need to get to the lab," Roger said, fumbling for his clothes in the dark. "Our research." A deafening explosion rocked the building, cutting him off mid-sentence. Willa's eyes widened with fear. "It's Vox," she whispered. "He's made his move." Together, they navigated the darkened hallways, the emergency lights casting an eerie red glow. As they approached the genetics lab, they heard the sound of breaking glass and angry voices. "Quick in here," Roger hissed, pulling Willa into a supply closet. Through a crack in the door, they watched as a group of denobulans, their faces contorted with rage, smashed equipment and overturned workstations. "We have to stop them," Willa said, her voice trembling. "Our work." Roger placed a hand on her arm. "We can't take them all on. We need to secure the data and protect the samples. That's our priority now." Using their knowledge of the lab's layout, they crept around the periphery, avoiding detection. Roger quickly downloaded their research onto a secure data crystal, while Willa gathered the most critical genetic samples, carefully placing them in a portable stasis unit. As they worked, Roger's mind raced. How had Vox's followers infiltrated the facility so easily? The implications were chilling. The radical faction must have been planning this for months, perhaps even years. Across the planet, at the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett found himself face-to-face with the brutal reality of Vox's insurgency. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors as armed denobulans stormed the facility. "Dr. Bennett, we need to move," Dr. Lyra shouted, pulling him away from his workstation. "They're coming for you, for us." Marcus's scientific mind quickly assessed their options. "The climate control system," he said, his eyes lighting up with an idea. "We can use it to our advantage." Working swiftly, Marcus and Lyra reprogrammed the Institute's environmental controls. As the extremists closed in on their position, Marcus activated the system. A thick, harmless vapor began to fill the corridors, disorienting their attackers and providing cover for their escape. "This way," Lyra urged, leading Marcus through a maze of back passages. "There's a secure comm station in the lower levels. We can alert the authorities from there." At the Southern Islands breeding facility, Alejandro Ruiz's military instincts kicked into high gear as chaos erupted around him. The sound of breaking glass and angry shouts filled the air as Vox's followers attempted to take control. "Zara, gather everyone you can trust," Alejandro instructed his denobulan partner. "We need to secure a defensible position." Using his tactical knowledge, Alejandro quickly organized the loyal staff members. They barricaded themselves in the facility's central control room, a space with reinforced walls and its own power supply. "We need to send out a distress call," Alejandro said, surveying the room's communication equipment. "Zara, can you operate the system?" Zara nodded, her fingers flying over the alien controls. "I'm broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Someone will hear us." As the situation unfolded across the planet, the Earth diplomatic team found themselves thrust into the heart of the crisis. In their temporary quarters in the denobulan capital, Dr. Elena Kovacs and Commander John Blackwood scrambled to respond. "We need to establish contact with Earth immediately," Kovacs said, her voice tense. "This could have severe diplomatic repercussions." Blackwood nodded grimly. "Agreed. But our first priority is the safety of our people. I'm going to coordinate with local security forces to mount a response." As Kovacs worked to establish a secure channel to Earth, Blackwood liaised with the denobulan authorities. He soon found himself in contact with Captain Thora, the newly appointed leader of the denobulan security forces. "Commander Blackwood, I assure you we're doing everything in our power to contain the situation." Thora's voice crackled over the comm. "I've dispatched teams to each of the breeding facilities. Our priority is the safety of all personnel, both denobulan and human." Back at the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center, Roger and Willa huddled in the darkened genetics lab, surrounded by the sounds of destruction. As they worked to salvage what they could of their research, a sudden power surge caused one of the stasis units to activate. "Roger, look," Willa gasped. pointing at a holographic display that had flickered to life. Through the ghostly blue light, they saw something remarkable. One of their experimental hybrid embryos, previously unstable, was now showing signs of accelerated growth and unprecedented resilience. "This is incredible," Roger whispered, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. The power fluctuations must have triggered some kind of adaptive response in the embryo's genetic structure. As they watched in awe, the implications of their accidental discovery began to sink in. This could be the breakthrough they had been searching for, a key to overcoming the genetic barriers between humans and denobulans. But their moment of scientific triumph was short-lived. The sound of approaching footsteps reminded them of the danger they were in. Roger quickly secured the embryo and its data, knowing that this discovery could change everything if they managed to survive the night. Outside, the streets of the denobulan capital were in turmoil. As Captain Thora's forces engaged Vox's followers in running battles, the Denobulan High Council convened in an emergency session. The council chamber buzzed with tension as they debated their next move. "We cannot allow this insurrection to continue," one council member argued. "Perhaps it is time to request direct military intervention from Earth." Others vehemently disagreed, fearing that such a move would only escalate the conflict and potentially lead to interstellar war. As the debate raged on, reports came in of Vox himself slipping away into the Forbidden Zone, the radioactive wasteland created by the original catastrophe that had decimated the denobulan population. As dawn broke over the denobulan homeworld, the full scope of the crisis began to emerge. The attacks had exposed deep-seated fears and resentments, but they had also revealed the strength of the bonds formed between the human participants and their denobulan partners. In labs, medical bays, and barricaded rooms across the planet, humans and denobulans worked side by side, fighting not just for survival, but for a shared future. The challenges ahead were daunting. With Vox still at large and the specter of the Forbidden Zone looming on the horizon, the human-denobulan alliance faced its greatest test. As Captain Thora's forces worked to restore order, Roger, Marcus, Alejandro, and their denobulan counterparts knew that their work, both scientific and diplomatic, was more crucial than ever. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with the potential for either unprecedented cooperation or devastating conflict. As the immediate danger of Vox's attack began to subside, a new reality dawned. The true battle for the future of human-denobulan relations was only just beginning. As the immediate danger subsided, a tense calm settled over the denobulan homeworld. Captain Thora, assessing the extent of Vox's attacks, made a swift decision. Her voice crackled over the planet-wide communication system. "Attention all citizens and visitors. A planet-wide lockdown is now in effect. Remain where you are until further notice." The announcement echoed through the corridors of the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center, where Roger, Howard, and Willa found themselves trapped in the genetics lab. They exchanged a worried glance, realizing the implications of their confinement. "We're stuck here," Roger said, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "But maybe that's not such a bad thing. We need to monitor this embryo closely." Willa nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the resilient hybrid embryo. "You're right. This could be the breakthrough we've been searching for." As hours turned into days, Roger and Willa worked tirelessly, their world narrowing to the confines of the lab and the pulsing blue light of the embryo's stasis unit. The close quarters and shared purpose created an electric atmosphere between them. One evening, as Roger adjusted the nutrient flow to the embryo, Willa placed a hand on his shoulder. He turned, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension that had been building for weeks finally broke. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, hands exploring unfamiliar contours with urgent curiosity. As they came together, their union was a blend of scientific precision and raw, primal need. Across the planet, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra huddled in the darkness of an underground bunker beneath the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute. The stark concrete walls and humming emergency generators created an atmosphere of isolation. "We need to recreate our research," Lyra said, her voice tight with stress. "Everything we can remember, every scrap of data we managed to save." Marcus nodded, pulling out a data pad. "Let's start with the basic genetic markers we identified. If we can reconstruct those, we might be able to extrapolate the rest." As they worked, hunched over the dim light of the data pad, their hands brushed together. The contact sent a jolt through both of them, a reminder of the attraction they'd been fighting since they first met. Lyra looked up, her alien features softened in the low light. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice heavy with unspoken desire. Words became unnecessary as they came together, their intimate exploration a mixture of scientific curiosity and deep-seated longing. Meanwhile, at the Southern Islands breeding facility, Alejandro Ruiz coordinated the defenses with military precision. He and Zara moved among the survivors, offering reassurance and direction. During a quiet moment on watch, Zara approached Alejandro. "Your leadership has been invaluable," she said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Alejandro turned to her, struck by the intensity in her eyes. "We make a good team," he replied, his voice low. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy. Slowly, deliberately, they came together in a kiss that blended human passion with the intricate subtleties of denobulan bonding rituals. As these personal dramas unfolded, the political situation continued to deteriorate. In the High Council chambers, heated debates raged. Councillor Venn, a previously quiet voice, stood to address the assembly. "Colleagues, we face an unprecedented crisis. I propose a radical solution. We must temporarily relocate our human guests and their denobulan partners to an off-world facility." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices. Dr. Elena Kovacs, observing from a visitor's gallery, leaned forward with interest. "Commander Blackwood," she whispered urgently, "this could be our chance to secure the research, especially the resilient embryo Roger and Willa discovered." Blackwood frowned, his military training setting off alarm bells. "It's a security nightmare, Doctor. Moving them off-world could leave them vulnerable to attack or interception." As the debate raged on, a new threat emerged from the Forbidden Zone. Vox and his followers delved deeper into the radioactive wasteland, their bodies adapting to the harsh environment. "Soon," Vox promised his loyal supporters, "we will harness the power of this place and cleanse our world of the human taint." Little did they know that far above the planet's surface, an unidentified spacecraft was approaching, its intentions unknown. As it entered the outer reaches of the denobulan system, long-range sensors picked up its signature. In the Planetary Defense Center, a young denobulan officer's eyes widened as she interpreted the data. "Captain Thora," she called out, her voice trembling, "you need to see this." Thora strode to the console, her face hardening as she took in the information. "Alert the High Council," she ordered. "We have an unidentified ship entering our system." As the news spread, tension ratcheted up another notch. In labs, bunkers, and council chambers across the planet, humans and denobulans alike realized that their world was about to change once again. The approaching ship represented an unknown factor in an already volatile equation, its arrival poised to tip the delicate balance of power. With Vox gathering strength in the Forbidden Zone, political factions at odds in the High Council, and now an alien presence on the horizon, the future of human-denobulan relations hung by a thread. The decisions made in the coming hours would shape the destiny of both species, for better or worse. As the news of the approaching ship spread, the atmosphere on the denobulan homeworld shifted from tense to electric. Captain Thora's fingers flew across her console, initiating defensive protocols that had lain dormant for generations. Beside her, Commander John Blackwood stood rigid, his military training kicking into high gear. All planetary defense systems online. A denobulant officer reported, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Thora nodded, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. Open a channel to the High Council. They need to be aware of every development. As the ship entered orbit, its sleek blue hull gleaming against the backdrop of space, a collective gasp rippled through the command center. The distinctive design was unmistakable. "Andorian," Blackwood murmured, his brow furrowing. "What are they doing here?" Before Thora could respond, the communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from the vessel, Captain." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an Andorian male, his antennae twitching with barely held back excitement. "I am Ambassador Shran," he announced, his voice carrying a hint of amusement at the palpable tension. "I come in peace and with great interest in your unique situation." Thora exchanged a glance with Blackwood before addressing the Andorian. "Ambassador, your arrival is unexpected. What brings you to denobulan space?" Shran's antennae curved forward, a gesture of openness. "I've come to observe and potentially assist with your human denobulan breeding program. It's caused quite a stir in diplomatic circles, you know." As Thora relayed this information to the High Council, the chamber erupted into a flurry of debate. Counselor Venn, seeing an opportunity, stood to address his colleagues. "Esteemed members of the Council," he began, his voice carrying across the din, "we find ourselves at a crossroads. The Andorian presence offers us a unique opportunity for additional support and expertise. I propose we grant Ambassador Shran's request to land and engage in diplomatic talks." The council chamber buzzed with murmurs of agreement and dissent. Dr. Elena Kovacs, observing from her position in the gallery, leaned in to whisper to Commander Blackwood. "This could be exactly what we need," she said, her eyes bright with possibility. "Andorian biological sciences are among the most advanced in the quadrant. Their input could be invaluable." Blackwood nodded slowly, his military instincts warring with the potential benefits. "It could also complicate an already volatile situation," he cautioned. As the council deliberated, activity in the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center reached a fever pitch. Roger Howard and Willa huddled over their resilient hybrid embryo, their earlier passion temporarily set aside in favor of scientific fervor. "Look at these readings," Roger said, gesturing to a holographic display. "The embryo's growth rate has increased by 200% in the last hour alone." Willa's eyes widened as she analyzed the data. "It's the radiation," she breathed, her mind racing. Somehow, exposure to the unique radiation from the Forbidden Zone is enhancing its stability and accelerating development. Their eyes met, the implications of this discovery sinking in. "We need more samples from the Forbidden Zone," Roger said, his voice tinged with both excitement and apprehension. Willa nodded, her face set with persistence. "It's risky, but it could be the key to perfecting the hybrid genome." As they began to formulate a plan, alarms blared throughout the facility. The intercom crackled to life with Captain Thora's voice. "Attention all personnel. We have received clearance for an Andorian delegation to land. All section heads report to the main conference room immediately." In the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra emerged from their underground sanctuary, blinking in the harsh light of day. The facility around them was in shambles, equipment overturned and data banks destroyed. As they picked their way through the debris, Lyra suddenly froze, her hand gripping Marcus's arm. "Look," she whispered, pointing to a partially hidden console. Marcus approached cautiously, his heart racing as he took in the scene. The console was still active, displaying a log of outgoing transmissions. His blood ran cold as he recognized a pattern in the data. "Someone's been sending information to an outside source," he said, his voice low and urgent. And based on the encryption used, I bet my last credit it's going straight to Vox's people. Lyra's face paled, her alien features contorting with a mixture of anger and fear. "We have a mole," she hissed. "But who?" As they grappled with this new threat, the sound of approaching footsteps sent them scrambling for cover. Trust, they realized, had become a luxury they could no longer afford. In the Southern Islands breeding facility, Alejandro Ruiz and Zara worked with grim efficiency to coordinate the evacuation. Captain Thora's orders had been clear. The facility was too exposed, too vulnerable to potential attacks. As they directed the flow of personnel and equipment, Alejandro noticed Zara's distracted glances towards a nondescript wall panel. "What is it?" he asked, his instincts on high alert. Zara hesitated for a moment before making a decision. She pressed a hidden mechanism, and the wall panel slid away to reveal a cache of advanced weaponry unlike anything Alejandro had ever seen. "What in the name of—" he breathed, taking in the arsenal before him. Zara's expression was a mix of shame and commitment. "There's a lot about our people you don't know, Alejandro. This facility, it wasn't just for breeding. We've been preparing for the possibility of conflict for longer than you can imagine." As Alejandro struggled to process this revelation, a calm signal chirped, demanding their attention. The evacuation would have to proceed, but now with the added complication of this hidden cache and the questions it raised about denobulan intentions. In the radioactive waste of the Forbidden Zone, Vox stood before a massive steel door, his followers gathered around him. The ancient denobulan script etched into the metal glowed faintly, reacting to their presence. "Our ancestors left us a gift," Vox proclaimed, his voice carrying across the desolate landscape. "A weapon to preserve the purity of our race. And now, we shall use it to cleanse our world of the human infestation." As the door groaned open, revealing a treasure trove of advanced technology and historical records, Vox's eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. The game had changed, and he now held cards that no one else knew existed. Back in the capital, as night fell and the Andorian ship descended through the atmosphere, all parties prepared for a meeting that would shape the future of not just two species, but potentially the entire sector. The air crackled with tension and possibility, each faction acutely aware of the high stakes at play. Unknown to most, among the Andorian delegation was Dr. Kira Yoshida, a human xenobiologist whose arrival would add yet another layer of complexity to an already intricate diplomatic dance. As she stepped onto denobulan soil, her mind raced with the implications of her secret work and the potential impact of this unprecedented gathering. The stage was set for a collision of scientific breakthroughs, political maneuvering, and looming conflict. As the various players took their positions, the fate of the human denobulan breeding program, and perhaps the future of interspecies relations, hung in the balance. As the various players took their positions, the fate of the human denobulan breeding program, and perhaps the future of interspecies relations, hung in the air. The grand meeting chamber buzzed with tension as a diverse group of humans, denobulans, and Andorians filed in. Captain Thora took her place at the head of the long, polished table, flanked by Counselor Venn and Commander Blackwood. Roger, Howard, and Willa entered, their faces etched with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra followed, exchanging worried glances. Alejandro Ruiz and Zara strode in, their postures rigid with military bearing. Ambassador Schran's antennae twitched as he surveyed the room, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Behind him, Dr. Kira Yoshida's eyes darted from face to face, taking in every detail of this unprecedented gathering. Captain Thora's voice cut through the murmur of hushed conversations. "We face a crisis unlike any in our history. The future of our peoples hangs in the balance. Let us begin." Roger Howard stood, his hands trembling slightly as he activated a holographic display. The image of a rapidly developing embryo hovered above the table, its cellular structure pulsing with an otherworldly energy. "This is our most promising hybrid embryo," he explained, his voice gaining strength as he delved into the science. "Its growth rate and stability are off the charts, and we believe it's due to exposure to radiation from the Forbidden Zone." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Dr. Yoshida leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with interest. "Fascinating. Have you considered the long-term implications of such radiation exposure?" Before Roger could respond, the chamber door burst open. A young denobulan officer rushed in, his face pale. "Captain Thora, urgent news from the Southern Islands breeding facility." All eyes turned to the newcomer as he delivered his breathless report. "The weapons cache. It's been stolen. We believe Vox's people are responsible." The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Alejandro Ruiz smacked his head on the table, silencing the chaos. "We need to act now. If Vox has those weapons, he could strike at any moment." Captain Thora nodded, her expression grim. "Agreed. We need a plan to neutralize this threat and secure the future of our program." She turned to Alejandro. "Commander Ruiz, I'm assigning you to lead a joint human denobulan task force into the Forbidden Zone. Your objectives are twofold: retrieve radiation samples for Roger's research and locate Vox's hidden base." Alejandro straightened, accepting the mission with a curt nod. "I'll need a team of our best, both human and denobulan." Ambassador Shran cleared his throat. "If I may, Captain, the Andorian Empire would be honored to contribute to this mission. Our latest scanning technology could prove invaluable in navigating the Forbidden Zone's hazards." Thora hesitated, then nodded. "Very well, Ambassador. Your assistance is appreciated, but understand that your involvement in the breeding program itself remains limited." As the details of the mission were hammered out, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra stepped forward. "There's another matter we need to address," Marcus said, his voice low. "We've uncovered evidence of a mole within the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute. Someone's been transmitting data to an outside source, likely Vox's people." The revelation sent a shockwave through the room. Captain Thora's eyes narrowed. "This is deeply troubling. We'll need to implement new security measures immediately. Dr. Bennett, Dr. Lyra, I want you working with our security teams to root out this traitor." As the meeting drew to a close, a series of rapid-fire decisions were made. Alejandro began assembling his team, while Roger and Willa received clearance to continue their hybrid embryo experiments. Dr. Yoshida, much to her delight, was granted permission to join the Forbidden Zone expedition, though under Commander Blackwood's watchful eye. Just as the group prepared to disperse, another alarm blared. The long-range sensor officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain Thora, we're detecting multiple unidentified objects approaching the system at high speed. Unable to determine if they're ships, asteroids, or something else." The atmosphere in the room shifted from tense to electric. Captain Thora's voice rang out, clear and authoritative. This mission just became even more critical. "Commander Ruiz, assemble your team and prepare for immediate deployment. The rest of you, to your stations. We're now operating under full alert status." As the room emptied, Alejandro found himself face to face with Zara. Their eyes met, conveying a whirlwind of emotions: fear, perseverance, and something deeper. Without a word, they embraced, their bodies pressed together in a moment of passionate connection before duty called them apart. Similar scenes played out across the facility. Roger and Willa shared a lingering kiss before diving back into their research. Marcus and Dr. Lyra clasped hands, drawing strength from each other as they prepared to hunt for the traitor in their midst. In the corridors, teams of humans and denobulans rushed to their assigned tasks, their steps in sync, their futures intertwined. The air thrummed with a mixture of anticipation and dread as the joint task force prepared to venture into the heart of the Forbidden Zone. As Alejandro Ruiz strapped on his gear and checked his weapon, he caught sight of Dr. Yoshida making last-minute adjustments to her environmental suit. Commander Blackwood stood nearby, his eyes never leaving the Andorian delegation as they calibrated their scanning equipment. The loading bay doors began to open, revealing the harsh, irradiated landscape of the Forbidden Zone. Alejandro took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. With a nod to his team, a mix of determined humans and denobulans, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them in the wasteland. As the task force moved out, the unidentified objects continued their approach, their nature and intent still unknown. Behind them, in the heart of the facility, Roger Howard bent over his console, his fingers flying across the controls as he worked to unlock the secrets of the hybrid embryo. And deep in the bowels of the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra began their hunt for the hidden traitor, knowing that every moment counted. The fate of two species now rested on the success of these disparate missions. As the sun set on the denobulan homeworld, casting long shadows across the landscape, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of human-denobulan relations for generations to come. The unidentified objects hurtling towards the denobulan system cast a long shadow over the proceedings, their approach accelerating the already frantic preparations. Captain Thora's voice crackled over the facility's communication system, her tone urgent but controlled. "All personnel, this is Captain Thora. We have confirmed that the approaching objects are spacecraft of unknown origin. All teams are to accelerate their preparations. Commander Ruiz, your expedition into the Forbidden Zone is now our top priority." Alejandro Ruiz nodded grimly, his eyes scanning the assembled team before him. Zara stood at his side, her posture mirroring his own, a blend of perseverance and barely concealed apprehension. Dr. Kira Yoshida double-checked her equipment, her fingers dancing over the alien technology with practiced ease. "Listen up," Alejandro addressed the group, his voice carrying across the loading bay. "We're moving out in 30 minutes. Our mission is critical. Retrieve radiation samples and locate Vox's base. The fate of two worlds may well rest on our success." As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Alejandro felt a hand on his arm. He turned to find Zara, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his breath catch. "Alejandro," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the din of the loading bay. "Whatever happens out there, I want you to know Dash." He silenced her with a gentle touch, his fingers brushing her cheek. "I know," he whispered. For a moment, the chaos around them faded away as they shared a brief, passionate kiss. The moment was shattered by the blaring of alarms. Commander Blackwood's voice rang out over the intercom. "All personnel be advised. The Andorian ship has detected an unknown energy signature emanating from the Forbidden Zone. Exercise extreme caution." Alejandro and Zara broke apart, their expressions a mix of longing and drive. With a final nod, they turned their attention back to the mission at hand. In the research lab, Roger Howard and Willa worked feverishly, their earlier breakthrough, with the hybrid embryo, driving them forward with renewed vigor. The holographic display pulsed with life, showcasing the rapid development of their most promising specimen. "It's incredible," Willa breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "The radiation exposure has accelerated the growth rate beyond our wildest expectations." Roger nodded, his fingers flying over the control panel. "If we can get more samples from the Forbidden Zone, we might be able to replicate the success on a larger scale." Their eyes met over the glowing display, the implications of their work hanging heavy in the air between them. Without a word, Roger stepped forward, pulling Willa into a fierce embrace. Their lips met in a kiss fueled by equal parts hope and desperation, the weight of their shared dreams pushing them closer together. Meanwhile, In the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra moved silently through the dimly lit corridors. Their investigation had led them to Dr. Nira, a senior denobulan researcher whose recent behavior had raised red flags. "There," Marcus whispered, gesturing towards a door left slightly ajar. Inside, they could hear the muffled sounds of a heated conversation. Dr. Lyra pressed her ear to the crack, her expression growing more troubled with each passing second. "It's Nira," she confirmed. "She's communicating with someone. Discussing troop movements in the Forbidden Zone." Marcus's eyes sharp. "We need to alert Captain Thora immediately." As they turned to leave, a floorboard creaked beneath Marcus's foot. The conversation inside the room abruptly ceased. Heart pounding, Marcus grabbed Dr. Lyra's hand, pulling her into a nearby storage closet just as the door swung open. Pressed together in the cramped space, they held their breath as footsteps approached. Dr. Lyra's body trembled against Marcus's, their shared fear and proximity igniting a spark of something more. As the footsteps receded, they remained locked in their embrace, neither willing to be the first to pull away. Back in the command center, Captain Thora and Commander Blackwood stood before a holographic display of the denobulan system. The unknown spacecraft were now clearly visible, their sleek, unfamiliar designs unlike anything in their database. "Still no response to our hails," Blackwood reported, his brow furrowed in concentration. Thora nodded, her expression grim. "Implement defensive protocols. I want our shields at maximum and weapon systems on standby." As the command center buzzed with activity, Counselor Venn approached, his face a mask of almost unchecked anxiety. "Captain, a word?" Thora followed him to a quiet corner, where Venn outlined his proposal for Project Seedling, a last resort plan to evacuate key personnel and embryos to an off-world facility. "It's a drastic measure," Venn admitted, but given the current situation, Thora considered for a moment before nodding. "Proceed with the preparations, Counselor. But let's hope it doesn't come to that." As the facility hummed with frantic activity, Alejandro Ruiz and his team boarded their vehicles. The experimental denobulan shielding technology hummed to life, enveloping them in a protective cocoon. Dr. Elena Kovacs approached, handing Alejandro a small, complex device. "These sensors will analyze the radiation in the Forbidden Zone," she explained. "The data could be crucial for our work here." Alejandro nodded, securing the device. With a final glance around the loading bay, he gave the signal. The bay doors groaned open, revealing the harsh, unforgiving landscape of the Forbidden Zone. As the task force moved out, the unknown spacecraft entered the outer reaches of the denobulan system. In the command center, Captain Thora watched their approach with growing unease. The silence from the vessels was deafening, leaving them to wonder. Were these new arrivals friend, foe, or something else entirely? With the fate of two species hanging in the balance, the task force ventured deeper into the radioactive wasteland, their mission more crucial than ever. Behind them, the denobulan homeworld braced for impact, on the precipice of an encounter that would shape the course of history. The task force moved out, their vehicles humming with the protective denobulan shielding technology. As they crossed the threshold into the Forbidden Zone, the harsh landscape stretched before them, a wasteland of twisted metal and crumbling structures bathed in an eerie, sickly glow. At first, the experimental shielding seemed to hold, allowing the team to make steady progress. But as they ventured deeper into the radioactive terrain, warning lights began to flash across their vehicle consoles. "Commander Ruiz," one of the denobulan technicians called out, his voice tight with concern. "The radiation levels are spiking. Our shields are failing faster than anticipated." Alejandro's eyes sharp as he surveyed the readings. "How much farther can we push?" The technician shook his head. "At this rate, maybe another kilometer before total system failure." With a resigned nod, Alejandro gave the order. All units, prepare to abandon vehicles. We continue on foot. The task force quickly donned their protective suits, each member acutely aware of the invisible danger that surrounded them. As they stepped out onto the irradiated soil, the reality of their situation sank in. They were now truly alone in this deadly environment. Dr. Kira Yoshida took point, her handheld scanner sweeping the area. "This way," she called out, gesturing towards a narrow path between two collapsed buildings. "The radiation levels are slightly lower along this route." Alejandro found himself impressed by the Andorian scientist's cool demeanor and quick thinking. As they navigated the treacherous terrain, he fell into step beside her. "Good call back there, Doctor," he said, his voice slightly muffled by his suit's comm system. "How are you holding up?" Kira's antennae twitched slightly, a sign of concentration. "I've studied environments like this for years, Commander. But being here, it's both terrifying and exhilarating." Their conversation was cut short as they crested a hill, revealing a sight that took their breath away. Before them lay the ruins of an ancient denobulan city, its once towering spires now bent and broken, yet partially preserved by the very radiation that made the area so deadly. "Incredible," Zara breathed, stepping up beside Alejandro. "I've heard stories about the lost cities of the Forbidden Zone, but to see one..." As the team carefully made their way through the ruins, Dr. Yoshida's scanner began to emit a series of rapid beeps. She frowned, adjusting the settings. "I'm picking up an energy signature. It's faint, but it's coming from..." There. She pointed towards a half-collapsed structure that might once have been a grand civic building. Alejandro signaled for the team to approach cautiously. As they drew closer, they noticed something out of place among the ancient rubble. A section of wall that looked almost new, its surface unmarred by centuries of radiation exposure. "It's a hidden entrance," one of the denobulan security officers whispered, running a gloved hand along the seam. With a shared look of drive, the team worked to uncover the entrance. As the false wall slid aside, it revealed a dark passageway leading underground. Alejandro activated his suit's built-in lighting system, illuminating the way forward. "This could be it," he said, his voice low. "Vox's hideout. Everyone stay alert. We don't know what we're walking into." As the task force descended into the unknown depths, tension crackling in the air, events continued to unfold back at the various facilities. In the research lab of the Northern Hemisphere Repopulation Center, Roger, Howard, and Willa found themselves facing a crisis. The hybrid embryo they had nurtured with such care suddenly began to show signs of genetic instability. "No, no, no," Roger muttered, his fingers flying over the control panel. "We're losing it." Willa's face was a mask of concentration as she analyzed the rapidly changing data. "The cellular degradation is accelerating. At this rate, we'll lose all viability within minutes." Roger's mind raced, considering and discarding options at lightning speed. Then, a wild idea struck him. "The radiation," he said, his eyes wide. What if that's the missing piece?" Willa looked at him, shock evident on her face. "You can't be serious. Exposing the embryo to radiation could destroy it completely." "Or it could be exactly what it needs," Roger countered. "Think about it. The denobulans evolved in an environment with higher background radiation. What if our hybrid needs that to stabilize?" For a moment, Willa hesitated. Then, seeing the drive in Roger's eyes, she nodded. "Do it." With steady hands belying his racing heart, Roger carefully calculated a dose of radiation, matching the levels found in the less extreme areas of the Forbidden Zone. As he initiated the exposure, he and Willa watched the monitors with nervous excitement. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to change. Then, suddenly, the embryo's vital signs began to stabilize. More than that, its growth rate accelerated, and its genetic markers showed increased stability. "It's working," Willow whispered, her voice filled with awe. "Roger, you did it." As they shared a moment of triumph, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Captain Thora's voice came over the intercom, her tone urgent. "All personnel be advised. We are implementing emergency protocols. Prepare for possible evacuation." Meanwhile, at the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra's investigation had reached a critical point. Hidden in a supply closet, they watched as Dr. Nira entered her office, unaware of their presence. "There," Marcus whispered, pointing to a small device Nira pulled from her pocket. "That must be her transmitter." They waited, barely breathing, as Nira began to input data into the device. Just as she was about to send the transmission, Marcus burst from their hiding place, Dr. Lyra close behind. "Stop right there. Dr. Nira," Marcus shouted. "You're under arrest for treason." Nira's eyes went wide with shock, then narrowed in defiance. Before Marcus or Lyra could reach her, she slammed her hand down on a hidden panel on her desk. Instantly, blast doors slammed shut, sealing the three of them in the office. "You fools," Nira snarled, backing away from them. "You have no idea what's really going on here." As Marcus and Lyra faced off against the cornered traitor, the situation in orbit around Denobula was reaching a boiling point. The unidentified spacecraft, now revealed to be Orion Syndicate vessels, held position just outside weapons range. On the bridge of the lead Denobulan ship, Captain Thora received the incoming transmission. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of an Orion woman, her green skin contrasting sharply with her fiery red hair. "I am Navarra, representing the interests of the Orion Syndicate," she purred, her voice smooth as silk but with an undercurrent of steel. "We have information about the one you call Vox. Information that could change everything. But such valuable intelligence comes at a price." Thora's expression remained impassive, even as her mind raced through the implications. "We're listening," she said carefully. As these events unfolded across the Denobulan system, deep in the heart of the Forbidden Zone, Alejandro Ruiz and his team pressed forward into the underground complex. The air grew thick with tension as they descended further, the ancient Denobulan architecture giving way to more modern additions. Suddenly, Dr. Yoshida held up a hand, stopping the group. "Commander," she whispered, her antenna twitching, "I'm picking up life signs ahead. Multiple individuals." Alejandro nodded, signaling the team to take defensive positions. As they rounded the next corner, they found themselves on a balcony overlooking a vast chamber. What they saw below made their blood run cold. Dozens of Denobulans were strapped to various machines, their bodies pulsing with an unnatural glow. And there, in the center of it all, stood Vox himself, overseeing the horrific experiments. As the task force watched in silent horror, the true scale of Vox's plans began to unfold before them. The question now was not just how to stop him, but how to do so without sacrificing the very people they had come to save. Save. The gravity of the situation hit Alejandro like a physical blow. These weren't just test subjects. They were people, Denobulans who had likely been lured or coerced into Vox's twisted experiments. Alejandro's mind raced, formulating a plan. He turned to his team, speaking in a low, urgent tone. "We need to act fast. Dr. Yoshida, take half the team and focus on securing the test subjects. Gather any data you can about what's been done to them. The rest of you with me. We're going after Vox." Dr. Yoshida nodded, her antennae twitching with tenacity. "Understood, Commander." As the team split up, Alejandro led his group down towards the chamber floor. They moved swiftly but cautiously, using the machinery and equipment as cover. As they approached, one of Vox's assistants spotted them, shouting in alarm. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Vox's loyalists rushed to defend their leader, wielding makeshift weapons and experimental devices. Alejandro's team found themselves in the midst of a frenzied melee. Zara ducked under a swinging pipe, her combat training kicking in. She delivered a swift kick to her attacker's midsection, sending him sprawling. Nearby, Alejandro grappled with a burly denobulan, using the alien's momentum to throw him into a bank of computers. As the fight raged on, Zara noticed a hidden doorway partially obscured by a malfunctioning piece of equipment. "Commander," she called out, gesturing towards the entrance. "I'm picking up strong energy readings from in there." Alejandro nodded, understanding the potential importance of the discovery. "Go. Investigate it. We'll hold them here." Zara slipped away from the main battle, forcing the hidden door open. She found herself in a chamber filled with technology that seemed to blend ancient denobulan design with more modern innovations. The energy signature was strongest here, emanating from a central pillar that pulsed with an eerie light. Realizing the potential significance of this find, Zara began rapidly documenting everything she saw, using her suit's built-in recording devices. She worked quickly, aware that time was of the essence. Meanwhile, Dr. Yoshida's team had reached the first row of test subjects. The Andorian scientist's face was grim as she examined the restraints and monitoring equipment. "We need to get them out of here," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. Her team worked efficiently, disconnecting the denobulans from the machines and providing what immediate medical care they could. As they worked, Dr. Yoshida gathered data from the equipment, her scientific mind racing to understand what had been done to these people. Back in the main chamber, Alejandro had fought his way through the Vox. The denobulan scientist stood before a massive control panel, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and defiance. "It's over, Vox," Alejandro called out, approaching cautiously. "Surrender now, and maybe we can work something out." Vox's response was a bitter laugh. "You understand nothing, human. My work here is the key to saving our species. I won't let you destroy everything I've accomplished." In a sudden move, Vox lunged for the control panel. Alejandro sprang forward, tackling the denobulan. They grappled fiercely, each trying to gain the upper hand. In their struggle, they crashed against the panel, activating a series of controls. A deep thrumming filled the air, growing in intensity. Alejandro felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as energy crackled through the chamber. He realized with horror that they had accidentally triggered some sort of planetary defense system. The energy built to a crescendo, and then with a blinding flash, it released. Alejandro was thrown back, momentarily stunned. As his vision cleared, he saw that all the equipment in the chamber had gone dark. The comms in his suit crackled with static, then fell silent. Alejandro struggled to his feet, looking around in confusion. The fighting had stopped, everyone seemingly disoriented by the energy surge. He spotted Vox, slumped against the control panel, and moved to secure him. As Alejandro bound Vox's hands, he tried to make sense of what had just happened. The sudden silence, the dead equipment. It seemed the energy surge had caused some kind of blackout. But how widespread was it? And what would this mean for their mission, for the denobulan people they were trying to save? With no way to communicate with his team or the outside world, Alejandro knew they were on their own. They had Vox in custody and had rescued some of the test subjects, but their situation was far from secure. As he gathered his team, Alejandro couldn't shake the feeling that this blackout was just the beginning of their problems. In the hidden chamber, Zara stared at the now dormant ancient technology, her mind racing with the implications of what she had discovered. The energy surge had changed everything, and she knew that the information she had gathered could be crucial in the days to come. As the task force regrouped in the main chamber, they faced a daunting challenge. With no communications, no way to call for extraction, and a group of weakened denobulan test subjects to protect, They would have to find a way to navigate the dangers of the Forbidden Zone and make it back to safety. Alejandro looked at his team, seeing the mix of drive and uncertainty on their faces. He knew that the decisions they made in the next few hours could have far-reaching consequences, not just for their mission, but for the future of human-denobulan relations. With a deep breath, he began to outline their next move, acutely aware that somewhere above them, events were unfolding that could change everything. The course of galactic politics. As these thoughts raced through his mind, a deafening explosion rocked the complex, sending tremors through the ancient structure. "Everyone, brace yourselves," Alejandro shouted, steadying himself against a nearby console. The chamber plunged into darkness, save for the eerie glow of emergency lighting. The air filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics and the panicked cries of Vox's followers. Alejandro's team instinctively moved closer together, forming a protective circle around the rescued test subjects. "Status report," Alejandro barked, his eyes scanning the dimly lit room for threats. "Communications are down, Commander," Zara replied, her voice tense. "All our equipment is dead. Whatever that energy surge was, it's taken out everything electronic." Dr. Yoshida spoke up, her antennae twitching with agitation. "The test subjects are stable for now, but we need to get them proper medical attention soon. Some of these mutations are extensive." Alejandro nodded grimly. "Understood. We need to get out of here and find a way to contact Dash." His words were cut short as a group of Vox's loyalists, taking advantage of the confusion, launched themselves at the team. The chamber erupted into chaos once more. Zara sprang into action, her movements fluid and precise. She ducked under a wild swing from one attacker, using his momentum to throw him into another. Her denobulan combat training shone through as she effortlessly incapacitated two more assailants with swift, targeted strikes. Alejandro found himself grappling with a particularly large denobulan. They crashed into a bank of computers, sparks flying from the damaged equipment. With a grunt of effort, Alejandro managed to break free and deliver a solid punch to his opponent's midsection, doubling him over. As the fighting raged on, Alejandro noticed a flicker of movement from the corner of his eye. Vox, having freed himself from his restraints, was making a break for a hidden panel in the wall. "Zara," Alejandro called out. "Vox is getting away." Without hesitation, Zara disengaged from her current opponent and sprinted after Vox. She tackled him just as he reached the panel, both of them crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Alejandro rushed over to help, securing Vox once more. As he did so, he noticed the panel Vox had been trying to reach. It was unlike anything else in the chamber, its surface covered in intricate, glowing patterns. "What is this?" Alejandro muttered, studying the panel closely. Vox, despite his situation, let out a bitter laugh. "You really have no idea what you're dealing with, do you? That panel controls the planetary defense system, the very heart of denobulan power." Alejandro's eyes widened as he realized the implications. If they could deactivate the defense system, they might be able to restore communications and get help. But as he examined the panel more closely, he saw that it was protected by a complex series of locks. "Zara, take a look at this," he called out. She joined him, her brow furrowing as she studied the panel. "These locks, they're genetic in nature. It looks like they require both human and denobulan DNA to access." Alejandro met her gaze, understanding passing between them. "We need to bypass these locks. It might be our only chance to get out of here and stop whatever Vox has set in motion." Zara nodded, her expression determined. "I'm ready if you are, Commander." As they prepared for the risky procedure to combine their genetic material, Dr. Yoshida approached. "I've stabilized the test subjects as best I can, but we need to move quickly. Whatever you're planning, do it fast." Alejandro took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. He looked at Zara, seeing the same mix of tenacity and uncertainty in her eyes that he felt. As they began the delicate process of bypassing the genetic locks, Alejandro couldn't help but feel that this moment, this intimate joining of human and denobulan DNA, was more than just a means to an end. It was a symbol of what their two species could achieve together. The air crackled with tension as Alejandro and Zara worked, their bodies close, their focus intense. Each step of the process brought them closer to either salvation or disaster. As the final lock clicked open, a surge of energy pulsed through the chamber and the ancient denobulan technology hummed to life. Alejandro's hand hovered over the now accessible controls, the weight of his next decision pressing down on him. Whatever happened next would change the course of not just their mission, but potentially the entire future of human-denobulan relations. With a shared look of determination, Alejandro and Zara prepared to face the consequences of their actions, knowing that the true test of their alliance was only just beginning. With a shared look of persistence, Alejandro and Zara placed their hands on the ancient denobulan control panel. A soft hum filled the air as the system recognized their combined genetic signature. Suddenly, the panel lit up with a brilliant blue glow, and the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. "What's happening?" Dr. Yoshida called out, steadying herself against a nearby console. Before Alejandro could respond, a section of the chamber's wall slid open, revealing a hidden passageway bathed in an ethereal light. The team exchanged bewildered glances as they cautiously approached the entrance. "Commander," Zara whispered, her eyes wide with awe, "I think we've just discovered something big." As they stepped into the hidden chamber, they were greeted by the sight of advanced denobulan technology, unlike anything they had ever seen before. Sleek, pulsating machines lined the walls, their purpose a mystery yet to be unraveled. This could change everything, Alejandro breathed, his mind racing with the potential implications of their discovery. Their moment of wonder was interrupted by a commotion from the main chamber. A female denobulan, her lab coat torn and stained, stumbled towards them with her hands raised in surrender. "Please," she gasped, "I can help you. My name is Lyra. I was forced to work for Vox, but I want to make things right." Alejandro and Zara exchanged a wary glance before nodding to each other. They cautiously approached Lyra, weapons at the ready. "What kind of help can you offer?" Alejandro asked, his voice firm but not unkind. Lyra's eyes darted to the rescued test subjects. "I know how to reverse the genetic damage Vox inflicted on them, but we must act quickly." As Dr. Yoshida and Lyra set to work stabilizing the victims, Alejandro and Zara turned their attention back to the newly discovered chamber. They began documenting the ancient technology, their excitement growing with each new revelation. Meanwhile, far from the Forbidden Zone, Roger, Howard, and Willa faced a crisis of their own. The makeshift incubation chamber housing their hybrid embryos started to falter, its lights flickering ominously. "No, no, no," Roger muttered, his fingers flying over the controls. "We're losing power to the stasis field." Willa's face paled. "If we don't do something fast, we'll lose all our progress." Roger's mind raced through their options. With a deep breath, he made a decision that could either save their work or destroy it entirely. "We need to attempt a premature extraction," he said, locking eyes with Willa. "It's risky, but it's our only chance." Willa nodded, her teeth clenched. "Let's do it." Working in perfect synchronization, they prepared for the delicate procedure. Roger's hands trembled slightly as he initiated the extraction sequence. Moments that felt like hours passed as they watched the embryo, now resembling a tiny fetus, being carefully transferred into a portable stasis unit. As the last connection was made, the original chamber sputtered and died. Roger and Willa held their breath, watching the readouts on the new unit. Suddenly, a strong, steady pulse appeared on the monitor. "We did it," Willa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Their eyes met, and in that moment of shared triumph, something shifted between them. Without a word, Roger pulled Willa into a fierce embrace, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. Across the planet, in the Eastern Continent Fertility Institute, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra were making a breakthrough of their own. They huddled over a holographic display, analyzing the complex dance of human and denobulan chromosomes. "There," Marcus exclaimed, pointing to a specific sequence. "That's where previous attempts went wrong. They didn't account for the unique way our chromosomes interact during early embryonic development." Lyra's antennae quivered with excitement. "Marcus, this is brilliant. With this knowledge, we can refine our breeding techniques and increase our success rate exponentially." As they worked late into the night, the air between them grew charged with more than just scientific discovery. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same data pad, and they found themselves standing closer than strictly necessary. Finally, as the first rays of dawn began to peek through the lab windows, Marcus turned to Lyra, his heart pounding. "Lyra, he began, but words failed him. Instead, he gently cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly. As these events unfolded on the denobulan homeworld, a new development was taking shape in space. The off-world facility housing Project Seedling had finally restored full power, and Dr. Elena Kovacs and her team were working tirelessly to re-establish contact with the planet. Suddenly, their sensors lit up with multiple contacts approaching rapidly. "Doctor," one of her assistants called out, "we've got incoming ships, but they're not Romulan." Elena rushed to the sensor display, her heart racing. As the ships came into range, a communication request flashed on the screen. With a deep breath, she accepted the call. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike any she had ever seen before. Its iridescent skin shimmered, and multiple eyes blinked at her in unison. "Greetings," the being said, its voice a melodious hum. "We are the Zarek. We have been observing your collaboration with the Denobulans, and we wish to join your alliance." Elena stood speechless for a moment, her legs shaking from this unexpected turn of events. As she began to formulate a response, she couldn't help but wonder how this new development would affect the already complex situation unfolding across the sector. The future of multiple species now hung in a delicate balance, with scientific breakthroughs, political intrigue, and the arrival of a new alien race all converging at this crucial moment in time. Galactic history. As Elena contemplated her response to the Zarek, alarms blared throughout the off-world facility. "Dr. Kovacs," her assistant shouted over the din. "We're receiving an urgent transmission from Denobulan High Command. They're calling for an immediate summit of all involved parties." Elena's eyes widened. "Patch it through to my personal comm," she ordered, turning to address the Zarek representative. "I apologize, but we have an urgent situation developing. Would you be willing to accompany us to the Denobulan homeworld? Your presence at the summit could be invaluable." The Zarek being blinked its multiple eyes in rapid succession, a gesture Elena interpreted as agreement. "We would be honored to join you," it hummed melodiously. Within hours, Elena and her team, along with the Zarek representatives, were en route to the Denobulan homeworld. As their ship entered the planet's atmosphere, Elena marveled at the lush, alien landscape below. They touched down at a sprawling complex in the southern hemisphere, a repurposed military base now serving as the secure location for the crucial summit. The facility buzzed with activity as delegates from various groups arrived. Elena spotted familiar faces among the crowd. Alejandro Ruiz and Zara, their expressions a mix of excitement and tension as they unpacked samples of advanced denobulan technology. Nearby, Roger Howard and Willa carefully maneuvered a portable stasis unit, their protective postures betraying the precious cargo within, their hybrid embryo. As Elena led the Zarek delegation into the main conference area, she noticed Marcus Bennett, and Dr. Lyra huddled over a holographic display, their heads close together as they discussed their findings in hushed tones. The air crackled with anticipation and nearly unleashed energy. Captain Thora strode into the room, her commanding presence immediately drawing all eyes. "Welcome, everyone," she began, her voice carrying easily over the murmur of conversation. "We face unprecedented challenges and opportunities. The next few hours will be critical in shaping the future of not just the Denobulan people, but potentially the entire sector." As the captain outlined the agenda, Elena found herself seated next to Alejandro and Zara. She couldn't help but notice the subtle shift in their body language, a new intimacy that hadn't been present before. Alejandro caught her gaze and offered a small smile, which she returned with a knowing look. The summit began in earnest with Alejandro and Zara presenting their findings from the Forbidden Zone. Holographic displays flickered to life, showcasing the intricate designs of the ancient Denobulan technology they had uncovered. "The potential applications of this technology are staggering," Zara explained, her antennae quivering with nearly unleashed excitement. "We believe it could revolutionize not only our approach to the breeding program, but Denobulan society as a whole." Murmurs of amazement rippled through the audience. Elena watched as several Denobulan scientists furiously scribbled notes, their eyes wide with wonder. Next, Roger, Howard, and Willa took center stage, carefully placing their stasis unit on a raised platform. As the protective cover retracted, gasps echoed throughout the room. There, floating in a nutrient-rich solution, was a tiny but unmistakably hybrid fetus. "Ladies and gentlemen," Roger announced, his voice thick with emotion, "I present to you the first viable human Denobulan hybrid." The room erupted into a cacophony of voices. Some delegates pressed forward, eager for a closer look, while others hung back, their expressions a mix of awe and trepidation. As the excitement began to settle, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra stepped up to present their analysis of the hidden databank. Their refined understanding of chromosome interaction promised to dramatically improve the success rate of future breeding attempts. "With these new insights," Dr. Lyra explained, her antennae curled in concentration, "we believe we can increase viability rates by over 200%. The implications of their findings sent shockwaves through the assembled scientists and diplomats. Heated debates broke out across the room as the full impact of the combined discoveries began to sink in. Amidst the growing chaos, Elena stood to introduce the Zarek delegation. As Zilera, the luminescent alien, stepped forward, a hush fell over the crowd. "Esteemed colleagues," Zilera began, her melodic voice captivating the audience, "we come offering our expertise in bioengineering. Our techniques could further enhance the viability of human Denobulan hybrids and potentially accelerate your breeding program." The offer hung in the air, tantalizing yet fraught with implications. Before anyone could respond, an aide burst into the room, his face pale with urgency. "Captain Thora," he gasped, "we've detected a small fleet of Romulan ships entering the system." The room erupted into pandemonium. Captain Thora's voice cut through the noise. Everyone remained calm. "We need to address this threat while continuing our vital work here." As the delegates scrambled to process this new development, Elena caught sight of Commander Blackwood entering the room with a striking Orion woman, the undercover agent Tala. Their arrival added yet another layer of complexity to the already volatile situation. With tensions mounting and the specter of Romulan interference looming, Captain Thora called for a brief recess. "Take 30 minutes to collect yourselves," she ordered. "When we reconvene, we'll need to make some critical decisions." As the assembly dispersed, Elena found herself drawn into a huddle with Alejandro, Zara, Roger, and Willa. The weight of their shared experiences and the magnitude of their discoveries hung heavily between them. "We're on the cusp of something monumental," Alejandro murmured, his eyes scanning the room. "But at what cost?" Elena nodded, her mind racing with possibilities and potential pitfalls. As they stood there, united yet uncertain, she couldn't shake the feeling that the choices they made in the coming hours would ripple across the stars, forever altering the course of history for humans, denobulans, and perhaps the entire galaxy. As the group dispersed for the recess, an air of anticipation and unease settled over the facility. 30 minutes later, the delegates filed back into the main conference room, their faces etched with concern. Captain Thora strode to the center of the room, her posture rigid with tension. "We face an unprecedented situation," she announced, her voice carrying over the murmur of the crowd. "The approaching Romulan fleet demands our immediate attention. We must act swiftly and decisively." With practiced efficiency, Captain Thor divided the summit into task forces. "Alejandro, Ruiz, and Zara, you'll lead the team focusing on the ancient denobulan technology. We need to explore its potential for planetary defense." Alejandro and Zara exchanged a quick glance, their recent intimacy adding a new layer of complexity to their partnership. They nodded in unison and moved to gather their team. As they huddled around a holographic display of the Forbidden Zone artifacts, Zara's antennae quivered with excitement. "Look at this energy signature," she said, pointing to a pulsating diagram. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen." Alejandro leaned in, his shoulder brushing against Zara's. "If we can harness this, we might be able to create a planetary shield." Their team worked feverishly, fingers flying over consoles and voices rising in heated debate. Suddenly, a young denobulan scientist let out a gasp. "I've got it! The technology requires a unique combination of human and denobulan bioelectric signatures to activate." Alejandro and Zara locked eyes, the implications of this discovery sinking in. Their interspecies cooperation was no longer just beneficial, it was essential. Across the room, Roger, Howard, and Willa hovered anxiously over their stasis unit. The hybrid embryo within had grown at an alarming rate during the recess, its tiny form now pressing against the confines of its artificial womb. Dr. Keela, a denobulan geneticist with piercing green eyes, rushed to their side. "We need to transfer it immediately," she said, her voice urgent. "I have an experimental artificial womb that could accommodate its growth, but the procedure is risky." Roger gripped Willa's hand, their shared concern palpable. "Do it," Willa said, her voice barely above a whisper. The medical team sprang into action, their movements a choreographed dance of precision and care. As the embryo was carefully extracted from the stasis unit, Roger held his breath, his eyes fixed on the fragile life they had created. The transfer seemed to last an eternity, but finally, Dr. Keela stepped back, a smile breaking across her face. "It's done. The embryo is stable." Relief washed over Roger and Willa, but it was short-lived. Before their eyes, the embryo began to grow at an exponential rate, its features becoming more defined with each passing second. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Keela muttered, her antennae twitching in agitation. "We may have just accelerated the entire timeline of our breeding program." As the implications of this development rippled through the summit, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra found themselves thrust into the spotlight. They stood before a panel of scientists, ready to present their refined breeding techniques, when alarms blared throughout the facility. "The Romulan fleet has entered the system," a voice announced over the intercom. Chaos erupted in the conference room. Marcus felt Lyra's hand slip from his as she was pulled away by a group of denobulan officials. He watched helplessly as she disappeared into the crowd, her antennae the last thing he saw before she vanished from view. "Mr. Bennett," a stern voice called. Marcus turned to see Captain Thora motioning him over. "We need you to join the team enhancing our early warning systems. Your expertise could be crucial." As Marcus hurried to his new assignment, he couldn't shake the feeling that events were spiraling out of control. The once carefully managed breeding program had become a catalyst for change on a scale no one had anticipated. In a secure communications room, Commander Blackwood and Tala huddled over a bank of monitors, their faces illuminated by the glow of incoming data streams. "This can't be right," Tala muttered, her green skin pale in the dim light. "The Romulan ships. They're not in attack formation." Blackwood leaned in, his eyes narrowing as he studied the sensor readings. "No, they're not. In fact, they look more like refugee ships," Tala finished, her voice filled with disbelief. As this revelation spread through the summit, it sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. The threat they had been bracing for had transformed into a humanitarian crisis, forcing them to reevaluate their entire approach. In a sealed laboratory, Dr. Elena Kovacs found herself trapped with Zilera, the Zarek representative. The facility's security protocols had engaged, isolating them from the rest of the summit. "Perhaps we can use this time productively," Zilera suggested, its iridescent skin shimmering in the sterile light of the lab. Elena nodded, and they began to work, combining Zarek bioengineering techniques with Project Seedling data. As they delved deeper into their research, a startling possibility emerged. "This is incredible," Elena breathed, staring at the results of their latest simulation. "With this method, we could potentially mature human denobulin hybrids at an accelerated rate." Zilera's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession. "A solution to your immediate population crisis, but at what cost to the children themselves?" Before Elena could respond, the lab was rocked by a violent tremor. Alarms blared as a shimmering, purple mist began to seep through the air vents. "Containment breach in Sector 7, an automated voice announced. Mutagenic particles detected." Elena's eyes widened in horror as she realized the implications. The rapid activation of ancient technology, combined with the accelerated growth of the hybrid embryo, had created an unforeseen reaction. As the mutagenic cloud spread through the facility, chaos reigned. Humans and denobulins alike began to experience strange sensations, their bodies changing in subtle but noticeable ways. In the midst of this turmoil, long-range sensors picked up a new threat. A second fleet, possibly Klingon, was approaching from the opposite direction of the Romulan refugees. The summit, once focused on controlled scientific progress, now found itself at the center of a perfect storm of crises. As the mutagenic particles continued to spread, and the twin threats of Romulan refugees and potential Klingon aggressors loomed, the delegates faced a stark reality. The decisions they made in the coming hours would shape the future of not just their two species, but potentially the entire sector. The facility shuddered as another tremor rocked its foundations. The purple mist continued to seep through the air vents, its tendrils reaching into every corner of the complex. Delegates and scientists alike began to cough and gasp as the mutagenic particles infiltrated their lungs. Elena Kovacs felt a tingling sensation spread across her forehead. She raised her hand to touch the area and was startled to feel the beginnings of ridges forming beneath her skin. Beside her, Zilera's iridescent form seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "We need to get to the others," Elena said, her voice strained as she fought against the discomfort of her changing body. As they made their way through the chaos-filled corridors, they encountered Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra. Marcus's typically smooth skin now bore the distinctive denobulin ridges, while Lyra's antennae had receded, giving way to a more human-like brow. "The mutations are progressing faster than we anticipated," Marcus said, his eyes wide with a mix of fascination and concern. Dr. Lyra nodded, her newly acquired human features contorting with worry. "We need to find a way to control this before it's too late." The group pushed forward, navigating through panicked delegates and security personnel. They arrived at the main conference room to find Captain Thora coordinating emergency efforts. "Report," Thora demanded, her own features a striking blend of human and denobulin characteristics. Elena quickly explained their findings and the potential solution they had discovered in the lab. "We believe we can stabilize the mutations, but it will require a massive amount of bioenergy." Before Thora could respond, Alejandro Ruiz and Zara burst into the room, their bodies visibly altered by the mutagenic cloud. Alejandro's once smooth forehead now sported prominent denobulin ridges, while Zara's frame had filled out with human-like musculature. "Captain," Alejandro said, his voice urgent, "we've made progress with the ancient shield technology, but our changing physiology is interfering with the activation process." Zara stepped forward, her antennae twitching with nervous energy. "We need to act quickly. Our bioelectric signatures are shifting by the minute." As the group debated their next move, Roger Howard and Willa entered, accompanied by Dr. Keela. The denobulin geneticist's eyes were wide with excitement and trepidation. "The hybrid embryo," she announced. "It's growing at an unprecedented rate. The artificial womb can't contain it any longer." Willa stepped forward, her face set with perseverance. "I'll do it. I'll carry the embryo." The room fell silent as the implications of her offer sank in. Roger reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers in a gesture of support and shared determination. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Commander Blackwood's voice crackled over the intercom system. "Captain Thora, we've detected a Klingon fleet entering the system. They're on an intercept course with the Romulan refugee ships." The tension in the room ratcheted up several notches. Captain Thora's eyes narrowed as she processed this new threat. "We need to activate that shield now," she said, her voice cutting through the din. "Alejandro, Zara, get back to the generator. Do whatever it takes to get it online." The pair nodded and sprinted from the room, their bodies already adapting to their new hybrid physiology. Dr. Kovacs began preparations for the bioenergy harvesting procedure. Thora continued, "We'll need volunteers from both species." As Elena and Zilera set to work, Counselor Tila stepped forward. "I'll be the first to volunteer," she said, her voice firm despite the visible changes to her features. Others in the room began to raise their hands, humans and denobulins alike setting aside their differences in the face of this unprecedented crisis. Suddenly, the facility rocked with a massive surge of energy. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness before emergency power kicked in. "What was that?" Marcus asked, steadying himself against the console. Dr. Keela's eyes widened in realization. "The embryo," she gasped. "It must have released another energy pulse." The implications of this development sent shockwaves through the assembled group. They knew that time was running out, and the choices they made in the next few moments would shape the future of not just their two species, but potentially the entire galaxy. As they stood there, their bodies continuing to change and adapt, the weight of their responsibilities settled over them. The once carefully managed breeding program had become a catalyst for change on a scale no one had anticipated. Captain Thora's voice cut through the tension. "We need to move. Now, gather all essential personnel and equipment. We're evacuating to the ancient city in the Forbidden Zone." The delegates and scientists sprang into action, their newly hybridized bodies working with unexpected efficiency. As they prepared for the perilous journey ahead, they couldn't help but wonder what other surprises awaited them in the mysterious ruins of their ancestors. Outside, the Romulan refugee ships and the approaching Klingon fleet found themselves caught in a complex gravitational dance, pulled into orbit by the ancient denobulin technology. The stage was set for a confrontation that would redefine the balance of power in this sector of space. As the evacuation began, Elena caught a glimpse of the hybrid embryo, now safely transferred to Willa's womb. The sight filled her with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Whatever emerged from this unprecedented pregnancy would be something entirely new, a bridge between species, and perhaps the key to their survival in this rapidly changing universe. As the evacuation began, Elena caught a glimpse of the hybrid embryo, now safely transferred to Willa's womb. The sight filled her with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Whatever emerged from this unprecedented pregnancy would be something entirely new, a bridge between species, and perhaps the key to their survival in this rapidly changing world. The convoy of vehicles rumbled to life, carrying the summit delegates and essential personnel towards the ancient Denobulan city in the Forbidden Zone. The journey was treacherous, made even more challenging by the rapidly evolving physiology of the travelers. Alejandro Ruiz gripped the steering wheel of the lead vehicle, his newly formed Denobulan ridges furrowing in concentration. Beside him, Zara's eyes darted across the landscape, her hybrid senses alert to any potential danger. "Sharp turn ahead," Zara warned, her voice carrying a newfound resonance that seemed to vibrate in Alejandro's mind. He nodded, instinctively understanding her meaning beyond the words themselves. Their deepening bond manifested in an uncanny ability to anticipate each other's thoughts and actions. Behind them, Roger Howard monitored Willa's vitals in the medical transport. Her pregnancy progressed at an alarming rate, her abdomen visibly swelling as the hours passed. "How are you feeling?" Roger asked, his fingers dancing across the medical equipment with an intuitive grace born from his mutations. Willa grimaced, shifting uncomfortably. "Like I'm carrying a supernova. This child is growing so fast, Roger. I can feel it changing me from the inside out." He squeezed her hand, marveling at the increased sensitivity in his fingertips that allowed him to feel the subtle fluctuations in her pulse. Their shared experience of impending parenthood, combined with their physical transformations, created an unprecedented level of intimacy between them. In another vehicle, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra worked tirelessly to control and direct mutations among the convoy members. They focused on enhancing traits that would aid in survival within the Forbidden Zone. "Increase radiation resistance for the front vehicles," Marcus instructed, his hybrid features set in concentration, "and boost night vision for the rear guard." Dr. Lyra nodded, her fingers flying across a datapad. The results of their efforts were visible in the diverse array of hybrid forms among the travelers, each uniquely adapted to face the challenges ahead. As the convoy approached the outskirts of the ancient Denobulan city, an unexpected obstacle halted their progress. A massive energy field surrounded the ruins, pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. "It matches the embryo's heartbeat," Elena Kovacs realized, her hand pressed against the shimmering barrier. Commander Blackwood stepped forward, his enhanced senses probing the energy field. "All technology is dead beyond this point. We'll have to continue on foot." Tala, her green skin now mottled with patches of human pigmentation, pointed to a narrow crevice in the nearby rock face. "There, I can sense a path through the field." As the group abandoned their vehicles and filed through the hidden entrance, an unexpected phenomenon occurred. The close physical proximity triggered a resonance among their hybrid physiologies, creating a shared empathic field. Captain Thora gasped as she felt the emotions of those around her wash over her consciousness. "What's happening?" "We're connecting on a level beyond verbal communication," Dr. Keela explained, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Our hybrid forms are allowing us to share a collective consciousness." Inside the city, Dr. Elena Kovacs and Zilera marveled at the ancient Denobulan technology scattered throughout the ruins. As they examined a particularly intricate device, a theory began to form. "This entire city," Elena breathed, her eyes wide with realization. "It's one massive bioengineering facility." Zilera's multiple eyes blinked in rapid succession, designed to manipulate and guide the evolution of species. Our current mutations might be part of a long-dormant program suddenly reactivated by the presence of human Denobulan hybrids. As the group settled into what appeared to be a vast laboratory complex, Willa's pregnancy reached a critical point. The hybrid embryo emitted another powerful energy surge, activating long-dormant systems throughout the city. The activation had far-reaching consequences. The energy field surrounding the ruins expanded rapidly, enveloping the entire Forbidden Zone. In orbit, the Romulan refugee ships, Klingon science vessels, and Denobulan defense fleet found themselves caught in the field's pull. They descended gently, landing in a massive clearing just outside the city walls. Captain Quark of the Klingon science fleet was the first to make contact with the summit delegates. His own crew showed signs of mutation similar to those experienced by the humans and Denobulans. "We offer our scientific expertise," Quark announced, his forehead ridges now a striking blend of Klingon and Denobulan features. "Together, we may unravel the mysteries of these transformations." The Romulan refugees, led by Sub-Commander Trin, cautiously entered the city. Their exposure to the energy field had initiated changes in their physiology as well, with some Romulans developing human characteristics, while others displayed Denobulan traits. Trin, her pointed ears now complemented by subtle Denobulan forehead ridges, approached Captain Thora. "We propose an alliance. Our scientific knowledge in exchange for sanctuary and a role in shaping this new hybrid civilization." As representatives from all three species convened in the central laboratory, a cry of pain echoed through the ancient halls. Willa had gone into labor. The hybrid embryo, having reached full term in a matter of days, was ready to be born. Roger rushed to her side, supported by Dr. Keela and a team of human, Denobulan, Klingon, and Romulan medical experts. They prepared for a birth that could change the course of galactic history. The ancient city systems pulsed with increasing intensity, reacting to the imminent arrival of the first human Denobulan hybrid. Alejandro and Zara, their hybrid physiologies uniquely attuned to the city's technology, exchanged a worried glance. "We need to understand these systems," Alejandro said urgently. "The birth might trigger a transformation beyond anything we've seen so far." As they raced against time to decipher the city's controls, the boundaries between species continued to blur. The once clearly defined lines of human, Denobulan, Klingon, and Romulan merged into a new, hybrid identity. Willa's cries grew more intense, echoing through the ancient halls. The moment of birth approached, promising to usher in a new era of interspecies cooperation and evolutionary advancement that none could have predicted when the breeding program first began. The ancient city trembled with anticipation, its systems pulsing in rhythm with Willa's labor. Roger Howard stood by Willa's side, his features now a striking blend of human and Denobulan characteristics. His hands, glowing with an unexpected bioluminescence, hovered over Willa's swollen abdomen. Dr. Keela and the multi-species medical team moved with practiced efficiency, their diverse physiologies working in perfect harmony. "You're doing great, Willa," Roger encouraged, his voice carrying a new resonance that seemed to soothe her pain. "Just a little more." Willa gritted her teeth, her body racked with another contraction. The walls of the makeshift medical bay pulsed in sync with her effort, casting an eerie glow over the assembled team. Meanwhile, deep within the ruins, Alejandro and Zara made their way through winding corridors. Their hybrid forms allowed them to navigate the city's defenses with ease, as if the ancient structures recognized them as their rightful inheritors. "There," Zara pointed, her enhanced vision picking out a faint glow emanating from behind a seemingly solid wall. As they approached, the wall shimmered and dissolved, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Alejandro gasped as they stepped inside. The room was a perfect sphere, its walls covered in intricate, pulsing bioluminescent patterns. At its center stood a pillar of swirling energy, responding to their presence with increasing intensity. "It's beautiful," Zara breathed, her fingers hovering over a control panel that materialized before them. "And I think I can understand it." Back in the genetics lab, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lira worked feverishly, their hybrid minds processing data at unprecedented speeds. Screens flickered with complex genetic sequences as they raced to stabilize the rapidly evolving hybrid physiologies. "There!" Marcus exclaimed, his eyes widening as a pattern emerged from the chaos. If we can isolate this sequence, we might be able to control the mutations. Dr. Lyra nodded, her antennae twitching with excitement. Implementing now. Let's hope this works. Outside the city walls, the landed spacecraft had become a surreal landscape of organic and technological fusion. Captain Quark led a team through what was once the sleek interior of a Klingon battlecruiser, now transformed into a living, breathing entity. Fascinating, Quark murmured, his hand brushing against a pulsing wall that seemed to respond to his touch. These ships are no longer mere vessels. They've become extensions of ourselves. In the central laboratory, Counselor Tila and Subcommander Trin huddled over a holographic display. Their features a blend of their original species and their new hybrid forms. We must ensure equal representation for all, Tila insisted, her voice carrying the weight of her new responsibilities. Trin nodded, her pointed ears twitching slightly. Agreed. Our strength lies in our diversity. This charter must reflect that. As they worked, the city's energy levels continued to rise. The pulsing lights and humming machinery reached a fevered pitch, synchronizing with Willa's final push. In the control chamber, Alejandro and Zara realized the gravity of their position. The ancient systems responded to their touch, offering them control over the impending transformation. "We can guide it," Alejandro said, his hands hovering over the shimmering controls. "Shape the future of our entire civilization." Zara nodded, her eyes reflecting the swirling energy before them. "It's an enormous responsibility, but we have to try." As they began the delicate process of influencing the city's protocols, Willa's cries echoed through the ancient halls. Roger stood ready, his glowing hands steady as he prepared to bring their child into this new world. "One more push, Willa," Dr. Keela encouraged, her antennae quivering with anticipation. With a final, Herculean effort, Willa bore down. The city's core pulsed in response, and a blinding light erupted from the central chamber, engulfing the entire Forbidden Zone. The energy wave swept across the planet's surface with impossible speed, passing through every living being in its path. Humans, Denobulans, Klingon, and Romulans alike felt the surge course through them, rewriting their genetic code on a fundamental level. As the light faded, a moment of stunned silence fell over the ancient city. Then, a single cry pierced the air, the first breath of Roger and Willa's newborn child. The infant opened its eyes, revealing irises that shimmered with an otherworldly light. Roger cradled the child, marveling at its perfect blend of human and denobulan features. "Hello, little one," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Around them, the inhabitants of the city began to stir, each individual now a unique synthesis of multiple species. Enhanced senses awakened, new neural pathways formed, and latent abilities flickered to life. Captain Quark burst into the medical bay, his appearance now a striking combination of Klingon, human, and denobulan traits. "The ships," he reported, his voice filled with wonder. "They become alive, sentient." Before anyone could respond, the ancient city systems roared to life. Dormant technologies activated throughout the ruins, responding to the newborn's cries as if awakening from a long slumber. In the control chamber, Alejandro and Zara worked frantically to understand and guide the cascade of changes sweeping across the planet. The holographic displays before them showed the transformation spreading far beyond the Forbidden Zone, encompassing the entire denobulan population. "It's affecting everyone," Zara gasped, her fingers dancing across the controls. "The whole planet is changing." As the inhabitants of the ancient city grappled with their new hybrid forms and abilities, urgent communications began pouring in from across the planet. The denobulan government, caught completely off guard by the sudden transformation of their entire species, called for an emergency meeting with the summit delegates. Counselor Tila received the transmission, her newly enhanced mind already processing the implications. "We need to act quickly," she announced to the assembled leaders. The entire planet looks to us for guidance in this new reality. The birth of Roger and Willa's child had not just marked the success of the breeding program. It had ushered in a new era of interspecies evolution. As the inhabitants of the ancient city began to explore their new abilities and identities, they faced the monumental task of shaping the future of their hybrid civilization. The child's cries echoed through the halls once more, a poignant reminder of the extraordinary changes they had all undergone. In that moment, the gathered leaders knew that their actions in the coming hours and days would determine the course of their new civilization and its place in the galactic community. The ancient city hummed with newfound energy as the cries of Roger and Willa's newborn child echoed through its halls. The assembled leaders, their features now a perfect blend of multiple species, gathered around the infant in awe. Roger cradled the child, his bioluminescent hands casting a soft glow on its face. "Welcome to the world, Nova," he whispered, instinctively choosing a name that embodied the dawn of their new era. Willa, her body still recovering from the accelerated pregnancy, reached out to touch Nova's cheek. "Look at those eyes," she marveled, noting the otherworldly shimmer in the infant's irises. Dr. Keeler ran a medical scanner over Nova, her antennae twitching with excitement. "Extraordinary," she murmured. "The child's neural activity is off the charts. It's as if Nova is already processing and understanding its surroundings." As the group marveled at the newborn, Alejandro and Zara burst into the medical bay, their hybrid forms perfectly attuned to the city's pulsing energy. "We've made a breakthrough," Alejandro announced, his eyes wide with excitement. "The city systems, they're designed for continued evolution. We can guide our development, adapt to any environment." Zara nodded, her fingers dancing over a holographic interface that materialized at her touch. "We've already initiated some controlled experiments. The possibilities are endless." Captain Kvok, his imposing figure now a striking blend of Klingon, human, and denobulan traits, stepped forward. "Then we must explore our new world. The Forbidden Zone may hold secrets crucial to our survival." As Kvok assembled a team for an expedition, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra set up a makeshift research center in a nearby chamber. They worked feverishly, analyzing data from the hybrid transformation. "Look at these cellular regeneration rates," Marcus exclaimed, pointing to a display. "Our lifespans could be extended by centuries." Dr. Lyra's antennae quivered with excitement. "And our immune systems, they're adapting at an unprecedented rate. We might be able to withstand environments that would have been lethal before." Outside the city walls, Kvok led his team into the transformed landscape of the Forbidden Zone. The once barren wasteland had erupted into a bizarre ecosystem, teeming with hybrid flora and fauna. "Remarkable," Kvok growled, his enhanced senses taking in the strange new world. A creature that seemed to be a cross between an earth lion and a denobulan cave-dweller prowled nearby, its bioluminescent mane pulsing in rhythm with the city's energy. As the expedition pushed deeper into the zone, they encountered increasingly bizarre and dangerous hybrid creatures. Kvok's enhanced strength proved invaluable as he wrestled with a massive plant-animal hybrid that had ensnared one of his team members. Back in the city, Counselor Tila and Subcommander Trin convened the first meeting of the Hybrid Council in a grand, newly discovered hall. Representatives from all former species gathered, their enhanced empathic abilities creating an atmosphere of unprecedented cooperation. "We must establish a new form of governance," Tila announced, her voice carrying a newfound resonance. "One that honors our diverse origins while embracing our shared future." Trin nodded, her Romulan features softened by denobulan ridges. "Agreed. Our strength lies in our unity, but we must not forget the unique perspectives each of us brings." As the council debated, a commotion arose from the city's outskirts. A Vulcan science vessel had entered the system, requesting permission to study the hybrid population. As the ship landed, its crew was drawn into the city's energy field, triggering their own genetic modifications. The introduction of Vulcan DNA into the hybrid pool led to unexpected developments. Some individuals began displaying enhanced logical reasoning and emotional control, while others manifested increased telepathic abilities. Alejandro and Zara worked tirelessly in the control chamber, recalibrating the city systems to accommodate the new genetic influx. "We need to maintain a balance," Zara muttered, her fingers flying over the controls. Too much of any one trait could destabilize our entire population. Meanwhile, Roger and Willow worked with Dr. Keela to establish a nursery and education center for future hybrid children. Nova's rapid development had proven to be the norm rather than the exception, as subsequent hybrid births showed similar accelerated growth patterns. "We need to rethink our entire concept of childhood and education," Willow mused, watching Nova absorb information at an astonishing rate. "Our children will outpace us in ways we can't even imagine." As the hybrid society began to find its footing, Commander Blackwood and Tala made a startling discovery. Their enhanced senses detected unusual energy signatures emanating from the planet's core. "It's as if the entire planet is awakening," Tala said, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. "The hybrid transformation has reactivated dormant geothermal systems. We might have access to an entirely new energy source." The Hybrid Council quickly convened to discuss the implications of this discovery. Plans for ambitious terraforming projects to reclaim the Forbidden Zone were proposed and debated with enthusiasm. However, their excitement was short-lived. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching the Denobulan system. The ships bore the markings of the Orion Syndicate, but their design incorporated elements of various species technology. "They must have heard about our transformation," Trin said grimly. "The Syndicate won't pass up an opportunity to exploit or destroy something this valuable." The council chamber erupted into frantic discussion. Alejandro and Zar were tasked with reactivating the city's ancient defense systems, while Quark began organizing the hybrid population into a makeshift defense force. As preparations for the potential conflict intensified, Roger and Willa made a startling discovery about Nova. The infant, now developing at an exponential rate, displayed an innate ability to manipulate the ancient city's technology. "Look!" Roger exclaimed as Nova's tiny hands waved, causing nearby systems to activate and respond. "She's interfacing with the city on a level even Alejandro and Zara can't match." The implications of this discovery sent shockwaves through the hybrid community. If natural-born hybrids possess such unprecedented abilities, what other surprises might their rapidly evolving society hold? As the Orion fleet drew ever closer, the inhabitants of the ancient city braced themselves for a confrontation that would test the limits of their newfound powers and unity. The future of their unique civilization hung in the balance, with the full extent of their hybrid abilities yet to be understood or harnessed. In the control chamber, Alejandro and Zara worked feverishly to bring the city's defensive systems online. The walls pulsed with energy as long-dormant weapon platforms throughout the Forbidden Zone hummed to life. The hybrid population, their bodies and minds transformed beyond recognition, prepared to face an enemy that sought to exploit or destroy the incredible potential of their new civilization. The ancient city hummed with newfound energy as its inhabitants raced against time to prepare for the approaching Orion Syndicate fleet. In the control chamber, Alejandro and Zara stood side by side, their fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. As they worked to reactivate the dormant weapon platforms scattered throughout the Forbidden Zone, their hybrid physiology allowed them to interface directly with the complex systems. Alejandro's eyes widened as he felt a sudden surge of information flood his mind. "Zara, are you feeling this?" She nodded, her antennae twitching with excitement. "It's like I can see the entire defensive network through your eyes." As they continued their work, their mental links strengthened, allowing them to share thoughts and emotions with increasing clarity. Zara felt a wave of affection from Alejandro, and she sent back a pulse of warmth and perseverance. We're making progress faster than I ever thought possible, Alejandro said, his voice filled with awe. At this rate, we'll have the entire defensive grid online before the Orions arrive. Meanwhile, in a secure testing facility within the city, Roger and Willa focused on harnessing the unique abilities of their child, Nova. The infant, now resembling a toddler in appearance, sat in the center of a circular platform surrounded by ancient denobulan technology. Nova's eyes, shimmering with otherworldly light, locked onto a nearby console. With a wave of her tiny hand, the device sprang to life, holographic displays blossoming around her. Incredible, Roger breathed, recording every detail of Nova's interaction with the technology. Her neural pathways are developing at an exponential rate. Willa frowned, a hint of concern creasing her brow. But what does this mean for her future? For all the natural-born hybrids to come? Before Roger could respond, an alarm blared through the facility. Nova, startled by the sound, instinctively reached out with her mind. The entire room lit up, systems activating in response to her distress. Outside the city walls, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra led an expedition into the transformed Forbidden Zone. The landscape had become a riot of colors and bizarre life forms, with hybrid plants and animals unlike anything they had ever seen. "Look at this," Dr. Lyra called out, kneeling beside a pulsating fungus that seemed to be communicating with nearby plants through bioluminescent signals. The level of symbiosis in this ecosystem is unprecedented. As Marcus moved to examine the fungus, a low growl echoed from a nearby grove of twisted trees. A massive creature emerged, its body a seamless blend of earth feline and denobulan cave dweller. Bioluminescent patterns rippled across its sleek fur as it stalked towards the group. "Everyone stay calm," Marcus warned, his enhanced muscles tensing for action. "Our hybrid physiology should give us an advantage." The creature pounced, its claws extended. Marcus met its charge, using his newfound strength to grapple with the beast. Dr. Lyra and the others quickly surrounded it, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to dodge its attacks while working together to subdue it. As they secured the creature for study, Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. "We need to catalog every new species we encounter. This hybrid ecosystem could hold the key to our survival." Back in the city, Captain Quark oversaw the fortification of the outer defenses. His imposing figure, now a striking blend of Klingon, human, and denobulan traits, moved with purpose as he directed a team of former Klingon warriors and Romulan tactical experts. "Secure those energy relays," Quark barked, pointing to a section of the wall. "We need to create a seamless defense grid that can adapt to any attack vector." As the team worked, Quark's enhanced senses picked up an unusual energy signature. He turned to see a small group of non-transformed denobulans approaching the city, led by a tall, slender scientist. "Halt!" Quark called out, his hand moving to his weapon. "Identify yourselves." The lead denobulan stepped forward, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and fascination. "I am Dr. Vex. We were off-world when, whatever this has happened, we've come home to find our world transformed." Quark's face softened slightly, recognizing the confusion and uncertainty in Dr. Vex's expression. "Come with me. The Council will want to speak with you." As Quark led the group into the city, Counselor Tila and Subcommander Trin were alerted to their arrival. They quickly organized a formal welcome ceremony in one of the ancient city's grand halls. Dr. Vex and his companions stood in awe as they entered the hall, surrounded by the hybrid population. As Tila began to speak, welcoming them home and explaining the transformation, a subtle change began to ripple through the newcomers. Dr. Vex gasped, looking at his hands as faint bioluminescent patterns began to appear on his skin. "What's happening to us?" Trin stepped forward, her Romulan features softened by denobulan ridges. "It appears the lingering transformation energy is affecting you. You're beginning the hybridization process. As the newcomers grapple with their changing bodies, Commander Blackwood and Tala burst into the hall, their faces urgent. "We've detected anomalies in the energy signatures of the approaching Orion fleet," Tala reported, her antennae twitching with excitement. "It's possible they've undergone some form of hybridization as well." The hall erupted into a flurry of activity as the implications of this news sank in. Alejandro and Zara were immediately contacted, tasked with adjusting the weapon platforms to account for the possible hybrid nature of the Orion forces. As tensions mounted, a soft glow emanated from the nursery where Nova was being kept. The child, now resembling a young adolescent, stood in the center of the room, her eyes closed in concentration. A shimmering energy field expanded from her body, interfacing with the city's systems. Roger and Willow watched in amazement as a holographic display of the entire denobulan system materialized around them, showing the positions of the approaching Orion ships and the hybrid society's defensive assets in real time. "She's created a tactical display," Roger said, his voice filled with wonder. "Nova's connecting with the city's systems on a level we never imagined possible." As the Hybrid Council convened an emergency session to discuss their strategy, Nova's display provided an unprecedented view of the unfolding situation. The child's ability to simulate various defensive scenarios became a crucial tool in evaluating their options. With the Orion fleet now only hours away from entering denobulan space, the hybrid society stood on the brink of its first major test. The ancient city hummed with nervous energy as its inhabitants prepared to face an unknown threat, their transformed bodies and minds pushing the boundaries of what they thought possible. In the control chamber, Alejandro and Zara shared a determined look, their mental link conveying a mix of anxiety and grit. As they made the final adjustments to the city's defenses, they knew that the coming confrontation would determine not just their fate, but the future of their entire hybrid civilization. As the tension in the ancient city reached a fever pitch, Commander Blackwood and Tala exchanged a determined glance. "We can't just wait for them to attack," Tala said, her antennae twitching nervously. "We need to try and establish communication first." Commander Blackwood nodded, his hybrid features set with grit. "Agreed. Let's use our enhanced abilities and the city systems to reach out to them." They made their way to the central communication hub, a vast chamber filled with pulsing light and holographic displays. As they approached the main console, their hybrid physiology allowed them to interface directly with the ancient technology. Tala closed her eyes, focusing her heightened senses on the approaching fleet. "I'm detecting unusual energy signatures from their ships. It's different from what we expected." Commander Blackwood's fingers danced across the holographic interface, initiating the communication protocols. "Let's hope they're willing to talk." In the weapons control room, Alejandro and Zara worked in perfect synchronization, their mental links stronger than ever. As they fine-tuned the defensive systems, Zara felt a wave of anxiety from Alejandro. "Hey," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We've got this." Alejandro turned to her, his eyes reflecting a mix of fear and purpose. "I know. It's just... everything's changing so fast." Their gazes locked, and for a moment, the impending threat faded away. Alejandro leaned in, his lips meeting Zara's in a gentle kiss. The connection between them surged, their shared emotions creating a cocoon of warmth and comfort amidst the chaos. As they reluctantly pulled apart, a proximity alarm blared through the city. Alejandro's eyes widened as he scanned the incoming data. "Zara, look at this. The Orion fleet. It's not what we thought." In the nursery-turned-command center, Nova stood at the center of a swirling holographic display. Roger and Willow watched in awe as their daughter, now resembling a young teenager, manipulated the city's defensive systems with mere thoughts. "She's not just creating displays," Roger said, his voice filled with wonder. She's actually enhancing the weapon platforms and shield generators. Willa nodded, a mixture of pride and concern on her face. But at what cost? We don't know how this is affecting her. Nova turned to them, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. I can see them, she said, her voice resonating with power. The Orions. They're like us. Outside the city walls, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra stumbled as the ground beneath them shifted. The hybrid plants around them began to pulse with bioluminescent light, forming intricate patterns that stretched as far as the eye could see. Marcus, look. Dr. Lyra pointed to the sky, where the patterns were clearly visible even from orbit. The entire ecosystem is acting as some kind of communications array. Marcus activated his comm link. Bennett to control. You need to see this. The Forbidden Zone is amplifying our signals. It's like the whole planet is trying to make contact. In the council chamber, Counselor Tila and Subcommander Trin received a flood of incoming information. Dr. Vex and his recently transformed group stood nearby, their bodies still adjusting to the rapid hybridization. Counselors, Captain Quackus' gruff voice came through the comm system. We detected an anomaly. A single ship has broken off from the Orion fleet and is approaching rapidly. Trin's eyes narrowed. Can you identify it? Negative, Quack replied, but its energy signature is unlike anything we've seen. It's not Orion, that's for sure. As the council debated their next move, Commander Blackwood's voice cut through the chatter. We've established contact with the Orion fleet. You're not going to believe this, but they're hybrids too. A collective gasp went through the chamber. Tila stepped forward, her hybrid features set with grit. Put them through. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the face of an Orion male. His green skin was mottled with patches of other colors, and his eyes shimmered with an inner light that mirrored their own. I am Torque, leader of the Orion Hybrid Collective, he said, his voice a mix of familiar Orion tones and something altogether new. We come seeking others like us. As Tila began to respond, alarms blared throughout the city. The lone ship that had broken from the Orion fleet had entered the atmosphere, evading all attempts to intercept it. It's landing just outside the city walls. Zara's voice came through the comm system, tinged with disbelief. Tila turned to Trin, their hybrid minds quickly formulating a plan. Assemble a delegation. We need to meet these new arrivals face to face. As they hurried towards the city gates, Nova's voice echoed in their minds. They're not a threat, she said, her mental projection clear and strong. They're the key to understanding what's happening to all of us. The delegation, led by Tila and Trin with Alejandro, Zara, Roger, Willa, and Nova close behind, approached the clearing where the mysterious ship had landed. As they watched, the hull of the vessel shimmered and became transparent, revealing its occupants. A diverse group of individuals emerged, each bearing the unmistakable signs of hybridization. At their head walked a tall, elegant female whose features seemed to blend aspects of countless races. She stepped forward, her eyes scanning the group before settling on Nova. A smile of recognition spread across her face. I am Lyra, she said, her voice carrying the weight of countless worlds. Emissary of the Galactic Hybrid Collective. We've been looking for you. As the two groups stood face to face, the hybrid flora of the Forbidden Zone pulsed with renewed energy. The ancient city hummed with power, its systems resonating with the newfound connection. And in orbit, the Orion fleet hung motionless, waiting to see what this unprecedented meeting would bring. The fate of not just their world, but perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as the Denobulan hybrid society prepared to take its first steps onto a much larger stage. As the two groups stood face to face, the air around them seemed to vibrate with potential. Lyra's words hung in the air, pregnant with promise and possibility. Before anyone could respond, A low hum began to emanate from the ground beneath their feet. Nova's eyes widened, her gaze unfocusing as she tilted her head, as if listening to an inaudible voice. "Something's happening," she whispered, her voice carrying easily despite its softness. The hybrid flora surrounding them began to pulse with an intense bioluminescent glow, creating intricate patterns that stretched as far as the eye could see. The ancient city systems responded in kind, its technology harmonizing with the organic network in a symphony of light and energy. Alejandro and Zara gasped simultaneously, their mental link suddenly expanding beyond the confines of their own minds. They found themselves connected not just to each other, but to the very ecosystem of the Forbidden Zone. "Can you feel that?" Zara asked, her voice filled with awe. Alejandro nodded, his eyes wide. "It's like we're part of everything." As they spoke, the landscape around them began to shift subtly. Small hills rose and fell, creating natural bulwarks around the city's perimeter. Valleys deepened, forming channels that seemed to direct the flow of energy across the land. Meanwhile, in the heart of the ancient city, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra watched in amazement as the hybrid plants in their research facility began to change before their eyes. The flora twisted and grew, forming complex structures that pulsed with energy. "Marcus, look at this," Dr. Lyra called out, pointing to a readout on her datapad. "These plants aren't just communicating. They're manipulating energy fields on a quantum level." Before Marcus could respond, Captain Kvak's gruff voice came through their comm devices. "Bennett, Lyra, are you seeing this? The Orion fleet is emitting some kind of energy pulse. It matches the frequency of our hybrid network. In orbit, the Orion ships hung motionless, a web of energy connecting them to the planet below." Torque's face appeared on the main view screen of the city's control center, his expression a mix of excitement and trepidation. "We're synchronized with your network," he explained. "It seems we're all part of something much larger than we realized." As the various hybrid groups worked to understand these new developments, Nova suddenly stiffened. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and a vast holographic display sprang into existence around her, encompassing the entire city. Roger and Willow rushed to their daughter's side, their faces a mix of concern and wonder. The holographic display showed a galaxy-wide network of energy signatures, each pulsing in sync with the others. "She's showing us the other hybrid civilizations," Willow breathed, her voice filled with awe. Roger nodded, his scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "This network, it's connecting hybrid societies across the entire galaxy." As they watched, Nova's control over the holographic interface grew more refined. The display zoomed in on specific sectors, showing detailed information about each hybrid civilization. Counselor Tila stepped forward, her hybrid features set with purpose. "We need to understand what this means for us, for our future." Before she could continue, alarms blared throughout the city. Commander Blackwood's voice cut through the noise, urgent and tense. Multiple fleets detected approaching the system. Signatures match Federation, Klingon, and Romulan vessels. Tala, her antennae twitching nervously, added, "We've intercepted their communications. They know about the hybridization. Some see us as a threat, others want the technology for themselves." The Hybrid Council convened quickly, their enhanced minds working in concert to process this new threat. Sub-Commander Trin, her Romulan tactical training coming to the fore, proposed a bold plan. "We can use Nova's abilities, combined with the city's technology and our new connection to the ecosystem, to create a massive energy field around the entire system," she suggested. "It would serve as both defense and a means of communication." The council quickly agreed, and preparations began immediately. Alejandro and Zara, their consciousness now deeply intertwined with the hybrid ecosystem, began the process of aligning the planet's natural energy flows. As they worked, the landscape of the Forbidden Zone transformed dramatically. Mountains shifted, Valleys deepened, and rivers changed course, all forming a vast, natural amplification network for the impending energy field. Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra led teams to rapidly cultivate and modify key hybrid plant species. These new organisms grew at an astonishing rate, forming organic energy conduits that crisscrossed the planet's surface. In the city's control center, Roger and Willa worked closely with Nova, refining her control over the holographic interface. They discovered that she could not only display information, but also manipulate energy fields on a system-wide scale. As the hybrid society raced against time to implement their ambitious plan, Torque's voice came through once more. "We offer our assistance," the Orion leader said. "Our fleet can act as a buffer, creating a preliminary energy screen to buy you more time." With the galactic powers rapidly approaching and the fate of their newly formed hybrid society hanging in the balance, the inhabitants of the ancient Denobulan city pushed themselves to the limit. The air crackled with energy and possibility as they worked to bring their plan to fruition, knowing that the next few hours would determine not just their future, but potentially the course of galactic evolution itself. As the Hybrid Council raced to implement their defensive plan, the air crackled with an electric anticipation. Nova, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, stood at the center of the ancient city's control room. Her parents, Roger and Willa, worked feverishly at nearby consoles, channeling her growing abilities through the city's advanced systems. Suddenly, a low rumble shook the ground, and the holographic display surrounding Nova pulsed with intense energy. The massive field they had generated began to expand rapidly, pushing beyond the boundaries of the Denobulan system. "It's working," Alejandro called out, his voice tinged with excitement and a hint of concern. "But it's growing faster than we anticipated." Zara nodded, her consciousness intertwined with the hybrid ecosystem. "I can feel it. It's touching other worlds, other systems." As the energy field expanded, it encountered the approaching fleets from the various galactic powers. The ships at the vanguard of the formation suddenly lurched to a halt, their hulls shimmering with an eerie light. On the bridge of the lead Federation vessel, Admiral Thorne watched in horror as his crew began to transform before his eyes. "What's happening to us?" he demanded, his own skin starting to ripple and change. Similar scenes played out across the Klingon and Romulan ships. Warriors roared in confusion as their bodies shifted, melding with their armor. Scientists scrambled to analyze the phenomenon, their instruments registering off-the-scale readings. Back on the Denobulan homeworld, the Forbidden Zone was undergoing a dramatic metamorphosis. The hybrid flora pulsed with newfound energy, rapidly evolving into complex, technological structures. Trees twisted and grew, forming organic communication arrays. Flowers bloomed into living sensor pods, their petals acting as highly sensitive scanners. Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra stood in awe as their research facility transformed around them. The plants they had been studying suddenly sprouted tendrils that interfaced directly with their equipment. "This is incredible," Dr. Lyra breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're not just plants anymore. They're becoming something else entirely." A vine snaked its way across a nearby console, its tip splitting into delicate filaments that plugged into various ports. The screens lit up with a flood of data, far more complex than anything their instruments had previously detected. Marcus leaned in, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like they're talking to us, showing us." "Wait, are these defense schematics?" In orbit, the Orion fleet experienced a second wave of hybridization. Torque watched in amazement as his ships began to merge with the energy field. The hull of his flagship rippled and pulsed, becoming semi-transparent. "Status report," he barked, trying to maintain some semblance of control over the rapidly changing situation. His second-in-command, Vela, looked up from her console, her eyes now glowing with the same inner light as Nova's. "Sir, we've lost all traditional propulsion systems, but I think we can move faster now." It's like the ships have become part of the field itself. To demonstrate, Vela closed her eyes and concentrated. The ship responded instantly, darting across space at impossible speeds before coming to a stop at the edge of the system. In the council chamber, Dr. Vex and his team worked frantically to understand and control the hybridization process. Holographic models flickered around them, showing the complex interplay of energies at work. "We've isolated the key factors," Dr. Vex announced, his hybrid features set with perseverance. "With this, we should be able to modulate the transformation, make it more stable and predictable." Counselor Tila nodded gravely. "Excellent work, Doctor. We'll need that control if we're going to manage the situation." As the council debated their next move, Alejandro and Zara made a startling discovery. Their enhanced connection to the hybrid ecosystem had expanded beyond the planet's surface. With a thought, they could manipulate the energy fields surrounding nearby celestial bodies. Zara closed her eyes, concentrating on a large asteroid at the system's edge. The space rock shimmered, its surface rippling as hybrid flora burst into existence. Within minutes, it had transformed into a fully functional outpost, dripping with organic sensor arrays and defense systems. "We can create a network," Alejandro said, his voice filled with awe. "A living defense grid for the entire system." As they worked to expand this network, Nova's abilities continued to grow exponentially. The strain on her small body was evident, sweat beading on her forehead as she maintained her connection to the vast energy field. "Nova, honey, are you okay?" Willa asked, maternal concern overriding her scientific fascination. Nova nodded, her eyes never leaving the holographic display. "I can see them all, Mom. Every world the field touches. I can guide the change." Roger's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "She's become a catalyst for galactic hybridization," he whispered. At the edge of the system, the expanding energy field encountered a previously undetected spatial anomaly. The interaction created a brilliant flash of light, visible even from the planet's surface. A rift in space-time opened, revealing tantalizing glimpses of alternate realities. Captain Quack's gruff voice came through the comm system. "Council, we're detecting a massive influx of data from the anomaly. It's showing us other forms of hybridization, advanced technologies beyond anything we've seen." As the hybrid society grappled with these new developments, the approaching fleets hung in space, their crews and ships still undergoing transformation. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of the denobulan system, but potentially the entire galaxy. As the hybrid society grappled with the galaxy-wide changes they had set in motion, a new crisis emerged on the denobulan homeworld. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, a low rumble rising from the planet's core. Alejandro and Zara, their senses heightened by their connection to the hybrid ecosystem, were the first to notice the change. They exchanged a worried glance as the vibrations intensified. "Something's wrong," Alejandro said, his voice tight with concern. "The planet's core is becoming unstable." Zara closed her eyes, reaching out with her hybrid-enhanced senses. "The rapid evolution of the ecosystem. It's affecting the planet's geological processes." As if to confirm their fears, a violent tremor shook the ancient city. In the distance, a plume of ash and smoke rose from a long-dormant volcano. Alarms blared throughout the control center as data flooded the screens. Dr. Vex rushed to analyze the incoming information, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "Seismic activity is increasing exponentially," he reported, his voice strained. "We're seeing new fault lines forming, and the volcanic activity is off the charts." Counselor Tila turned to Alejandro and Zara, her expression grave. "Can you use your connection to the ecosystem to stabilize the planet?" The pair nodded, their faces set with grit. They moved to the center of the room, where Nova still stood, surrounded by the pulsing energy field. As Alejandro and Zara began their work, channeling their abilities through the hybrid network, a new alert sounded. Commander Blackwood's voice cut through the chaos. "Unidentified vessel entering the system," he reported. It's massive, unlike anything we've seen before." On the main view screen, an enormous ship appeared. It was unlike any conventional vessel, its form more organic than mechanical. It pulsed with an inner light, its surface rippling like living tissue. The hybrid council watched in awe as the ship effortlessly passed through the energy field that had transformed the other fleets. It came to a stop just beyond the planet's orbit, dwarfing even the largest of the Federation ships. A transmission came through, crystal clear despite the interference from the energy field. A being appeared on the screen, its form fluid and ethereal, yet somehow familiar. "Greetings, children of Denobula," the being said, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "I am Zelnara, matriarch of the progenitors. We have come to address the changes you have set in motion." The council chamber fell silent, the gravity of the moment palpable. Counselor Tila stepped forward, her voice steady despite the shock. "We welcome you, Zelnara, but who are the progenitors? And what do you mean by the changes we've set in motion?" Zelnara's form shimmered, a sad smile playing across her features. "We are the original creators of the hybridization technology that now spreads across your galaxy. An experiment begun billions of years ago, designed to guide the evolution of life." The revelation sent shockwaves through the room. Dr. Vex's eyes widened, his scientific mind racing with the implications. "But the spread of hybridization," Zelnara continued, "has accelerated beyond our predictions. It threatens the delicate balance we have maintained for eons." As the progenitor spoke, Roger and Willa exchanged worried glances. Nova still stood at the center of the energy field, her small form trembling with the effort of maintaining her connection. "Our daughter," Willa said, stepping forward. "She's at the heart of this. Can you help us understand what's happening to her?" Zelnara's gaze softened as she looked at Nova. The child is a nexus, a focal point for the hybridization process. Her abilities are unprecedented. The matriarch paused, considering. "I will examine her, if you permit it. Our bioorganic technology may provide insights your science cannot." As preparations were made for Nova's examination, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra burst into the council chamber, their faces flushed with excitement. "We've made a breakthrough," Marcus announced, gesturing to the data pad in his hand. "The sentient hybrid plants, they're not just flora anymore. They're evolving into a network of bioorganic computers." Dr. Lyra nodded eagerly. "If we can harness this network, we might be able to process the vast amounts of data generated by the hybridization process. It could give us the control we need." As the council digested this new information, Captain Kvak's voice came through the comm system. "Council, I've analyzed the data from the spatial anomaly," he reported. "There's an ancient installation hidden in this system on a small, undetected moon. It appears to be a progenitor origin." Zelnara's form stiffened at this revelation. "You found one of our control centers," she said, her voice tinged with surprise. "It was designed to manage large-scale evolutionary processes." The hybrid council exchanged glances, the weight of their responsibility settling heavily upon them. They stood at a crossroads, with the fate of not just their world, but the entire galaxy hanging in the balance. Counselor Tila took a deep breath, her hybrid features set with dedication. "We need to explore this installation," she declared. "Captain Kvak, assemble a team. Alejandro, Zara, can you prepare volunteers for the conditions on the moon?" As the expedition preparations began, Nova suddenly gasped, her eyes glowing brighter than ever. The energy field around her pulsed, sending a shockwave through the room. On the progenitor ship, an ancient artifact began to hum, its surface crawling with strange symbols. Zelnara's eyes widened in alarm. "The child has activated a dormant artifact," she exclaimed. "Its energy is interacting with the hybridization process, accelerating and altering its effects in ways we cannot predict." The room erupted into chaos as alarms blared and systems fluctuated wildly. The hybrid society now faced a race against time, with the very fabric of the galaxy hanging in the balance. The hybrid society now faced a race against time, with the very fabric of the galaxy hanging in the balance. Before anyone could react to Zelnara's warning, a pulse of energy erupted from Nova's small form, rippling through the council chamber and beyond. The ground beneath their feet shuddered, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. Alejandro and Zara exchanged alarmed glances as they felt the hybrid ecosystem respond to the surge. Through their heightened connection, they sensed massive shifts occurring across the planet's surface. "The landscape," Zara gasped, her eyes wide. "It's changing." Outside the chamber, the once familiar skyline of the Denobulan capital began to warp and twist. Mountains in the distance undulated like waves, their peaks rising and falling as if alive. The ground split open in places, revealing glimpses of churning magma beneath, while elsewhere, new land masses burst forth from the sea. Counselor Tila's voice cut through the chaos. "Alejandro, Zara, we need you to stabilize the transformations. Create safe zones for our people." The pair nodded, their bodies already beginning to merge more closely with the hybrid flora surrounding them. As they worked, their limbs elongated into root-like structures, anchoring them to the ground and extending their influence across the changing landscape. Meanwhile, Captain Quack's expedition team hurried to their ships, the urgency of their mission to the hidden progenitor installation now magnified tenfold. As they lifted off, the captain watched in awe as the planet's surface shifted beneath them, entire continents reshaping themselves in a matter of minutes. Back in the council chamber, Roger and Willow worked frantically with Zelnara to control Nova's expanding abilities. The progenitor matriarch's form shimmered as she interfaced with the surrounding hybrid technology. "We need to create a buffer," Zelnara explained, her voice resonating with urgency. "A chamber to contain and channel her power safely." Dr. Vex, overhearing the conversation, rushed over with a holographic blueprint. "We can use the hybrid organic materials to construct it," he suggested, his fingers flying over the interface. "Combined with progenitor technology, it should be able to withstand Nova's energy output." As they worked to build the chamber, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra burst into the room, their faces flushed with excitement despite the chaos. "The bioorganic computer network," Marcus panted, gesturing wildly. "It's evolving faster than we anticipated. Look!" On the screens around them, pulsating organic structures could be seen emerging across the planet's surface. Each node glowed with an inner light, processing vast amounts of data about the ongoing hybridization process. Dr. Lyra's eyes gleamed as she explained, "These living supercomputers are giving us real-time analysis of the transformations. We can use this information to manage the changes more effectively." Outside, Alejandro and Zara had succeeded in creating pockets of stability amidst the chaos. Their hybrid forms now resembled a cross between humans and towering trees, their root-like limbs extending for miles in every direction. Through this vast network, they guided the transformations, slowing them in populated areas to allow for evacuation and relocation efforts. As the hybrid society scrambled to adapt to their rapidly changing world, Captain Quack's team approached the small moon housing the progenitor installation. As they neared its surface, the moon seemed to come alive, its crust rippling in response to their presence. "By the stars," Quack breathed, watching as organic tendrils reached out from the moon's surface. "It's alive." The team's hybrid physiology began to shift as they made contact with the moon's bioorganic systems. Their skin took on a metallic sheen, and neural interfaces sprouted along their spines, allowing them to communicate directly with the living installation. As they penetrated deeper into the moon's core, Quokka's second-in-command, Lieutenant Varna, called out in surprise, "Captain, you need to see this." Before them stretched a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of stasis pods. Each pod pulsed with a soft light, revealing glimpses of the hybrid beings within, creatures that defied easy categorization, blending aspects of various species in ways that boggled the mind. Quokka approached one of the pods, his hand hovering over its surface. "There must be thousands of them," he murmured. "Different hybrid species from across the galaxy." As the expedition team grappled with their discovery, a new figure arrived at the central city on the denobulan homeworld. Dr. Alara Voss. Her form a unique blend of human and denobulan traits with unexpected plant-like characteristics, strode purposefully towards the council chamber. Her arrival coincided with the completion of Nova's containment chamber. The young girl stepped inside, her small form dwarfed by the pulsating organic walls. As the chamber sealed, a look of relief washed over Nova's face, the strain of controlling her powers finally easing. With the immediate crisis temporarily contained, the hybrid council convened in a newly formed organic amphitheater. The structure, grown from hybrid plants, shifted and adapted to accommodate each member as they took their seats. As they interfaced with the bioorganic network, information flooded their senses. The Orion fleets returned from the fringes of the hybridization field, bringing samples of new forms of matter and energy. Dr. Vek's transformation clinics, spreading across the planet, helping stabilize the population's changing physiologies. The ongoing planetary transformations, reshaping the very ground beneath their feet. Counselor Tila's voice rang out, steady despite the weight of responsibility. "We stand at a crossroads unlike any our people have faced before. The decisions we make here will shape not just our world, but potentially the entire galaxy." As the council debated their next moves, Captain Quokka's voice crackled through the communication system. "Council, we've made contact with the progenitor installation. You're not going to believe what we found." The hybrid society teetered on the brink of even greater changes, the full scope of the progenitor's experiments only beginning to unfold before them. As Nova's powers continued to grow within her containment chamber and the planet itself reshaped around them, the stage was set for the next phase of their unprecedented journey. Evolution. As Nova's powers continued to grow within her containment chamber and the planet itself reshaped around them, the stage was set for the next phase of their unprecedented journey. Suddenly, a blinding flash of light erupted from the progenitor moon, followed by an eerie silence. The hybrid council's communication screens flickered and went dark, cutting off their connection to Captain Quokka's expedition team. "What happened?" Counselor Tila demanded, her hybrid features contorting with concern. Before anyone could respond, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The air around them thickened, becoming heavy and dense. Alejandro and Zara, still connected to the planet's ecosystem, gasped in unison. "The atmosphere," Zara choked out, her plant-like limbs quivering. "It's changing rapidly." Dr. Vex rushed to a nearby console, his fingers flying over the controls. "Oxygen levels are spiking," he reported, his voice tense. "We need to establish adaptation centers immediately." As the council mobilized to address the atmospheric crisis, Alejandro and Zara's bodies began to transform further. Their skin took on a bark-like texture, and leafy appendages sprouted from their arms. With a shared look of perseverance, they plunged their root-like feet deeper into the ground. "We can help," Alejandro said, his voice resonating with a new, woody timbre. "We'll create air purifiers." As they focused their efforts, massive tree-like structures burst from the ground across the planet's surface. These organic filtration systems pulsed with bioluminescent energy, working tirelessly to stabilize the rapidly changing atmosphere. Meanwhile, in her specialized laboratory, Dr. Alara Voss carefully examined the exotic matter samples brought back by the Orion fleet. Her unique physiology allowed her to handle the strange substances with ease, her partially plant-like hands immune to their corrosive effects. As she combined two seemingly inert samples, a sudden burst of energy knocked her back. A shimmering field of distorted space expanded from the point of contact, warping the very fabric of reality around it. "Fascinating," Dr. Voss murmured, her eyes wide with wonder. But her awe quickly turned to alarm as the field continued to grow, engulfing her equipment and threatening to spread beyond the lab. Alarms blared across the city as the reality distortion field expanded. The hybrid council, already stretched thin dealing with the atmospheric crisis, now faced a new threat. "Evacuate the area surrounding Dr. Voss's laboratory immediately," Counselor Tila ordered. "Marcus, Dr. Lyra, we need you to contain this phenomenon." As chaos unfolded in the city, Roger and Willa stood vigil outside Nova's containment chamber. Through the pulsating organic walls, they watched their daughter's small form twist and contort, her powers evolving in ways they could barely comprehend. "Look," Willa gasped, pointing at a corner of the chamber where space itself seemed to fold and ripple. Zelnara's form shimmered as she analyzed the phenomenon. "She's manipulating space-time," the progenitor matriarch said, her voice tinged with awe and concern. "This goes beyond anything we anticipated." Before they could discuss the implications of Nova's new abilities, a violent tremor shook the building. The lights flickered, and for a moment, all hybrid technology went dark. As systems slowly came back online, Roger and Willa rushed to check on Nova. But when they entered the chamber, they found only an empty space and a swirling vortex of energy where their daughter had been. "Nova!" Willa cried out, reaching towards a vortex before Roger pulled her back. Outside, the city was in chaos. The reality distortion field had expanded rapidly during the blackout, engulfing several blocks. As the hybrid council struggled to regain control, a group of strange figures emerged from the affected area. These new hybrids moved in ways that defied physics, their bodies shifting and changing with each step. One appeared to phase through solid objects, while another manipulated gravity around them, floating effortlessly above the ground. As the Council grappled with this new development, the Orion fleet in orbit detected an anomaly at the edge of the solar system. A massive tear in space-time had appeared, pulsing with the same energy they had observed in Nova's chamber. On the bridge of the lead ship, the hybrid captain stared at the view screen in awe. "By the stars," he whispered. "What have we awakened?" With Nova missing, a reality-warping field expanding through their city, and a cosmic anomaly threatening their entire system, the hybrid society faced its greatest challenge yet. As the Council convened to address these crises, they knew that every decision they made would shape not just their world, but potentially the fate of the entire galaxy. The hybrid's evolution had opened doors to incredible possibilities, but as they stood on the precipice of the unknown, they wondered, at what cost? The hybrid council stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the cosmic anomaly displayed on the console. The silence that followed the captain's words was shattered by a series of urgent alerts from the planet's surface. Counselor Tila's voice crackled through the communication system. "We have multiple situations developing planetside. The reality distortion field around Dr. Voss's laboratory is changing." As if on cue, the swirling energy surrounding the lab began to contract, its chaotic pattern stabilizing into a shimmering dome. The Council watched in fascination as the field slowly receded, revealing a group of figures emerging from within. These survivors moved with fluid grace, their bodies shimmering with an otherworldly energy. Among them stood a woman whose presence commanded attention. Her skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and her eyes glowed with an inner light that seemed to pierce through the very fabric of reality. "Incredible," Dr. Vex breathed, his scientific curiosity overriding his caution. "The field has accelerated their evolution far beyond our current hybrid state." The woman stepped forward, her movements smooth and deliberate. "I am Lyra," she announced, her voice resonating with a harmonic quality that sent shivers through the assembled hybrids. "We have seen things, understood things. Your network, your technology, we can help." Without waiting for a response, Lyra approached the nearest bioorganic terminal. She placed her hand on its surface, and instantly, the system came alive with a surge of data. The hybrid council watched in awe as she interfaced directly with the network, her consciousness seeming to flow through the organic circuitry. "The moon," Lyra said, her eyes unfocused as she processed vast amounts of information. "Your expedition team, they're in danger. The installation is activating." As the council grappled with this new development, Roger and Willa stood before the swirling vortex that had swallowed their daughter. The energy pulsed and writhed, defying all attempts to analyze or contain it. "We can't wait any longer," Roger said, his voice tight with dedication. "We need to go after her." Dr. Lara Voss nodded, her plant-like fingers dancing over a series of controls. "I've been able to stabilize the energy signature. We should be able to create a temporary portal." As the team worked to establish a safe passage through the vortex, Alejandro and Zara fought their own battle against the planet itself. Their consciousness threatened to dissolve into the vast network of root systems and organic processors they had created. In a desperate move, they pulled themselves towards one of the massive air purifiers they had grown. As their bodies made contact with its pulsing surface, a surge of energy flowed through them. Their individual minds snapped back into focus, now expanded to encompass the entire network of purifiers spanning the planet. "We can see everything," Zara gasped, her voice resonating through the organic structure. "The atmosphere, the changes, it's all connected." As the hybrid society struggled to adapt to these rapid changes, the Orion fleet made first contact with the ships emerging from the cosmic anomaly. The vessels were unlike anything they had ever seen, each one a unique blend of organic and technological components. "This is Captain Thiele of the Orion fleet," the hybrid officer transmitted. "Identify yourselves." The response came not in words, but in a burst of sensory data that flooded the Orion ship systems. Images of worlds consumed by out-of-control hybridization flashed through their minds, accompanied by feelings of fear, desperation, and hope. "They're refugees," the captain realized, "fleeing from worlds where the process has gone wrong." Back on the planet's surface, Dr. Vex and his team worked tirelessly in the adaptation centers. The air itself seemed to shimmer with potential energy, threatening to reshape everything it touched. "We've done it," Dr. Vex announced, holding up a vial of swirling, iridescent liquid. "This compound should allow our bodies to adapt rapidly to the changing conditions." As the compound was distributed throughout the population, the effects were immediate. Hybrid bodies shifted and changed, fins and gills appearing and disappearing as needed to process the fluctuating atmosphere. In the heart of the progenitor moon installation, Captain Kvok and his team finally managed to access the central control hub. As they interfaced with the ancient systems, the entire structure hummed to life around them. "By the stars," Kvok breathed as vast chambers were revealed, filled with technology beyond their wildest imaginations. "What have we awakened?" Before they could explore further, a series of energy pulses began to emanate from the moon's core. On the planet below, the hybrid ecosystem responded instantly. Plants grew and evolved at an astonishing rate, while animals underwent rapid mutations to adapt to the changing environment. Amidst this chaos, Roger, Willa, and Dr. Voss stepped through the stabilized portal into the heart of the progenitor installation. They found themselves in a crystalline chamber, its walls pulsing with bioorganic circuitry. And there, at the center of it all, was Nova. The child floated motionless, suspended in a web of glowing tendrils. Her body had changed, becoming a seamless blend of human, denobulan, and something entirely alien. "Nova!" Willa cried, rushing forward. But as she reached out to touch her daughter, energy crackled between them, forcing her back. Dr. Voss's eyes widened as she analyzed the connections between Nova and the surrounding systems. She's integrated into the entire network. Removing her could destroy everything, including her. Roger and Willa exchanged a pained look, the weight of their decision pressing down upon them. As they stood there, caught between the safety of their child and the fate of entire worlds, the installation around them continued to pulse with unknown purpose, its secrets yet to be unraveled, revealed. As Roger and Willa grappled with the impossible choice before them, a sudden surge of energy pulsed through the installation. The walls of the crystalline chamber hummed with increased activity, and the tendrils surrounding Nova began to pulse with a rhythmic glow. "Wait," Dr. Voss said, her eyes widening as she analyzed the data streaming across her hybrid interface. "Something's changing in the system." At that moment, Captain Kvaka's voice crackled through their communication devices. "We've done it. We've stabilized the moon's internal structure and regained control of its systems." The news sent a ripple of hope through the small group. Dr. Voss immediately began interfacing with the newly accessible systems, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that materialized in the air around her. "This changes everything," she muttered, her eyes scanning rapidly over the incoming data. "We may not need to extract Nova physically. If we can interface with the system using our hybrid abilities, we might be able to communicate with her consciousness directly." Roger and Willa exchanged a look of cautious optimism. "What do we need to do?" Roger asked, his voice tight with perseverance. Dr. Voss guided them to specific points around Nova's suspended form. "Place your hands here," she instructed, indicating glowing nodes on the chamber's walls. "Focus on your connection to Nova, your memories, your love for her. The system should recognize your genetic link and allow you access." As Roger and Willa made contact with the nodes, they felt a tingling sensation course through their bodies. The world around them seemed to fade away, replaced by a swirling vortex of light and information. Meanwhile, back on the denobulan planet, Alejandro and Zara's expanded consciousness continued to grow. Their awareness, linked through the network of organic air purifiers, suddenly detected something new. "Do you feel that?" Zara's voice resonated through the organic network, reaching Alejandro's mind. "Yes," he replied, his thoughts merging with hers. "There's something beneath us." Their shared consciousness probed deeper, pushing through layers of rock and soil. Suddenly, they found themselves aware of a vast network of underground chambers, their design eerily similar to the structures on the progenitor moon. "This is incredible," Alejandro breathed, his voice echoing through the organic systems. "The entire planet. It's all connected." As this revelation unfolded, the Hybrid Council faced a new challenge in orbit. The refugee ships from other hybrid worlds approached, carrying with them unknown variables that could potentially destabilize the already fragile denobulan ecosystem. Dr. Vex, ever adaptable, quickly proposed a solution. "We need to establish a quarantine zone," he said, addressing the council. "I can set up a space station to process and examine the newcomers. We can't risk introducing any destabilizing elements to our world." The council agreed, and within hours, a makeshift space station was assembled using hybrid bioorganic technology. As the refugee ships docked, Dr. Vex and his team began the delicate process of examining and interviewing the newcomers. Among the refugees, a group of hybrids with unique abilities caught Dr. Vex's attention. One individual in particular stood out, a hybrid named Lyra, whose body seemed to pulse with bioluminescent patterns. "You're different," Dr. Vex observed as he examined her. "Your hybridization has progressed further than ours." Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing with an inner light. "Our world. The process went too fast. We couldn't control it, but we learned things, understood things that might help you." Back on the planet's surface, Marcus Bennett and Dr. Lyra worked tirelessly to integrate the bioorganic computer network with the newly discovered underground chambers. As they connected the systems, a surge of information flooded their interfaces. "This is incredible," Dr. Lyra gasped, her eyes wide as she processed the incoming data. "The planet, our entire world. It's all part of a grand experiment." Marcus nodded, his fingers flying over holographic displays. "Controlled evolution, spanning millions of years. And we're the culmination of it all." As they delved deeper into the data, the reality distortion field surrounding Dr. Voss's laboratory began to exhibit new properties. Pulses of energy radiated outward, accelerating the hybridization process in nearby flora and fauna. In the affected zone, plants grew and mutated at an astonishing rate. Animals underwent rapid transformations, developing new abilities and increased intelligence. Some even displayed problem-solving skills, far beyond their original species' capabilities. The Orion fleet, maintaining its vigilant orbit, detected a new phenomenon. Energy signatures, matching those of the progenitor technology, approached from deep space. "Captain," a hybrid officer called out on the bridge of the lead ship, "we're picking up multiple signatures. They're coming from all directions." The captain's eyes widened as he processed the implications. "It's not just our system," he realized. "The whole galaxy is waking up." On the progenitor moon, Captain Clock's team made another breakthrough. They uncovered a massive data archive containing information about thousands of worlds where hybridization experiments had been conducted. "This is it," Clock said, his voice filled with awe as he addressed his team. "The key to understanding everything we've been through, everything we're becoming." As the hybrid society grappled with this influx of information and new challenges, Lyra emerged as a natural leader. Her ability to interface directly with the bioorganic computer network allowed her to synthesize vast amounts of data and provide crucial insights to the hybrid council. "We stand at a crossroads," Lyra addressed the council, her voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "The choices we make now will shape not just our world, but potentially the entire galaxy." The hybrid council listened intently, aware that they were on the brink of a new phase in their evolution. The activation of the progenitor moon installation, the discovery of the underground chambers on their planet, and the approaching energy signatures from deep space all pointed to a larger, galaxy-wide event unfolding. As they debated their next steps, Roger and Willa continued their mental journey through the progenitor systems, searching for their daughter's consciousness. The fate of Nova, and potentially their entire species, hung in the balance as they navigated the vast network of information and energy that surrounded them. The hybrid society, once focused solely on survival, now found itself at the center of a cosmic awakening. With new allies, advanced technology, and a deeper understanding of their place in the universe, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their rapidly changing world. As the hybrid council grappled with the implications of their rapidly evolving world, the denobulan planet itself began to respond to the awakening progenitor technology. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a low rumble that started as a whisper and grew to a thunderous roar. Alejandro and Zara, their consciousness still intertwined with the network of organic air purifiers, felt the change first. Through their expanded awareness, they sensed massive structures stirring beneath the surface, pushing upwards with inexorable force. "It's happening!" Zara's thoughts resonated through the network, reaching Alejandro's mind. "The planet is transforming." As if in response to their awareness, the Earth split open in countless locations across the planet's surface. Massive organic structures, pulsing with bioluminescent veins, erupted from the ground. These new growths twisted and stretched towards the sky, forming intricate patterns that seemed to follow some hidden design. Alejandro and Zara instinctively reached out with their expanded consciousness, guiding the growth of these new structures. Their actions help minimize disruption to existing settlements, redirecting the emerging formations around populated areas and towards regions in need of resources. As they worked, Alejandro felt his physical form changing, merging further with the hybrid ecosystem. His skin took on a translucent quality, revealing the pulsing network of energy flowing through his body. Zara experienced similar changes, her limbs elongating and sprouting tendrils that interface directly with the surrounding organic matter. "We're becoming one with the planet," Alejandro observed, his voice a mix of awe and trepidation. On the progenitor moon, Captain Quark and his team made a groundbreaking discovery. As they delved deeper into the ancient systems, they uncovered a dormant transportation network. "Look at this," Quark called out, his fingers dancing over a holographic interface. With a series of commands, the floor beneath them hummed to life, revealing a circular platform ringed with pulsing lights. A beam of energy shot upwards from the platform, coalescing into a swirling vortex of light and color. Quark's second-in-command, Lieutenant Vren, checked her readings and gasped. "Sir, it's a stable wormhole, and it's connected directly to the underground chambers on the denobulan planet." Quark's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "This changes everything. We can transport the progenitor technology and data archives directly to the planet's surface." Without hesitation, the team began the process of gathering the most critical pieces of technology and information. As they worked, the wormhole pulsed with energy, its swirling patterns hypnotic and alien. Meanwhile, in the crystalline chamber housing Nova, Roger and Willa continued their mental journey through the progenitor systems. Dr. Alara Voss monitored their vital signs, her hybrid interface allowing her to track their progress through the vast network of information. Suddenly, Roger's body tensed, and a small gasp escaped his lips. Willa's fingers twitched, her eyelids fluttering rapidly behind closed lids. "They've made contact," Dr. Voss breathed, her eyes scanning the incoming data. Inside the virtual landscape of the progenitor network, Roger and Willa found themselves face to face with a shimmering representation of their daughter. Nova's form flickered between human, denobulan, and something entirely alien, a being of pure energy and information. "Mom? Dad?" Nova's voice echoed in their minds, a mixture of confusion and recognition. "We're here, sweetheart." Willa projected her thoughts, reaching out to the flickering form of her daughter. Nova's consciousness surged towards them, enveloping them in a flood of information. Images and concepts flashed through their minds. The true purpose of the progenitor experiments, the role of hybrid species in galactic evolution, and the vast network of worlds undergoing similar transformations. Back on the denobulan planet, Dr. Vex worked tirelessly in the orbital quarantine station, examining the latest group of hybrid refugees. As he conducted his tests, one individual caught his attention, a hybrid whose genetic markers were unlike anything he had seen before. "Fascinating," Dr. Vex murmured, his eyes fixed on a holographic display of the hybrid's DNA. "Your genetic structure. It's capable of catalyzing rapid adaptation in other hybrid species." The hybrid, a tall, slender being with iridescent skin, nodded solemnly. "On our world, this ability emerged in the later stages of hybridization. It allowed us to stabilize the process, but it came too late to save our planet." Dr. Vex's mind raced with possibilities. If we can harness this ability, we might be able to control and optimize our own hybridization process. As Dr. Vex began formulating experiments to explore this new development, the reality distortion field surrounding Dr. Voss's laboratory continued to expand. The affected zone now encompassed several city blocks, creating a microcosm of extreme biodiversity. Marcus Bennett led a team of researchers into the distortion field, their hybrid bodies adapting in real time to the rapidly changing environment. Plants grew and mutated before their eyes, while animals displayed startling new abilities and increased intelligence. "Look at this," one of Marcus's team members called out, pointing to a group of small, rodent-like creatures. The animals worked together to construct a complex structure out of nearby vegetation, displaying problem-solving skills far beyond their original capabilities. Marcus carefully collected samples and data, his hybrid interface recording every observation. This could be a glimpse into our future, he mused, watching as a tree rapidly evolved the ability to walk, its roots becoming flexible limbs. As the hybrid society grappled with these internal changes, the Orion fleet detected a new development. The approaching energy signatures purposed into a fleet of massive bioorganic ships, each one rivaling the size of a small moon. Captain Thela stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching in awe as the colossal vessels positioned themselves around the outer planets of the denobulan system. "They're creating a defensive perimeter," his tactical officer reported, her voice filled with a mixture of fear and reverence. On the planet's surface, Lyra's unique ability to interface with the bioorganic computer network allowed her to intercept and decode transmissions from the newly arrived fleet. Her eyes glowed with an inner light as she processed the vast amounts of data. "These ships," she announced to the gathered hybrid council, "are part of a galaxy-wide network. They're here to protect worlds undergoing hybridization experiments. Our system, it's become a critical part of the progenitor's grand design." The council chamber erupted into a flurry of discussion and debate. As they grappled with the implications of this new information, the ground beneath them continued to shift and change, the planet itself evolving alongside its inhabitants. In the midst of this chaos, a group of hybrid individuals emerged from the reality distortion zone, their bodies pulsing with newfound energy. Led by a charismatic figure named Zen, they demonstrated remarkable empathic abilities, sensing and influencing the emotional states of those around them. Zen approached the council, his eyes reflecting the swirling colors of the evolving planet. "We can help," he said, his voice resonating with a strange harmony. "We can guide our people through this transformation, ease their fears, and help them embrace the changes." As the council considered Zen's offer, the wormhole in the progenitor moon installation flared to life. Captain Kwok and his team began transporting essential technology and data to the planet's surface, each arrival marking another step in the hybrid society's rapid advancement. The denobulan system stood on the brink of a new era, poised to play a central role in the grand tapestry of galactic evolution. As the physical transformation of their world continued unabated, the hybrid council prepared to make decisions that would shape not only their own society, but potentially the course of life throughout the galaxy. The future stretched before them, filled with both promise and peril, as the next phase of their incredible journey began to unfold. The hybrid council's deliberations were interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the chamber. Lyra's eyes widened as she processed a flood of data through her bioorganic interface. "We have a problem," she announced, her voice resonating with urgency. "The planet's core is destabilizing." Alejandro and Zara, their bodies now barely recognizable as humanoid, felt the disturbance ripple through the network of organic air purifiers. Without hesitation, they plunged deeper into their symbiotic connection with the planet's ecosystem. Alejandro's consciousness expanded, encompassing vast swaths of the planet's surface. He sensed the energy flows beneath the crust, chaotic and unbalanced. Zara's awareness penetrated deeper, reaching the molten core itself. Together, they began the delicate process of redirecting energy flows, their merged consciousness acting as a conduit for the planet's life force. Tendrils of bioorganic matter sprouted from their transformed bodies, burrowing into the ground and extending their influence. As they worked, the strain on their physical forms intensified. Alejandro's skin hardened into a bark-like texture, while Zara's limbs elongated further, branching out like the roots of an ancient tree. "We're losing our humanity." Alejandro's thoughts echoed through their shared consciousness. Zara's response came as a wave of drive. "We're becoming something more. Something necessary." On the progenitor moon, Captain Quark led his team through a newly discovered passageway. The air grew colder as they descended, their hybrid bodies adapting to the changing environment. "Over here," Lieutenant Vren called out, her voice echoing in the cavernous space. Quark approached, his eyes widening at the sight before him. Rows of cryogenic pods lined the walls, each containing a perfectly preserved specimen. The beings inside were unlike anything they had ever seen, a harmonious blend of organic and technological elements. "The progenitors," Quark breathed, his hand hovering over the surface of the nearest pod. "We've found them." With great care, the team extracted one of the pods and prepared it for transport. As they maneuvered the ancient technology towards the wormhole platform, alarms blared through the installation. "The wormhole's destabilizing," Vren shouted, her fingers flying over the control panel. In the crystalline chamber housing Nova, Roger and Willa felt the disturbance. Their daughter's consciousness, now a vast network of energy and information, pulsed with erratic patterns. "She's affecting the wormhole," Roger realized, his mind racing to understand the implications. Willa reached out, trying to soothe their daughter's agitated state. "Nova, sweetheart, we need you to focus. People's lives depend on this connection." Together, they worked to stabilize Nova's influence, guiding her expanding consciousness away from the critical systems. The wormhole fluctuated, its swirling vortex flickering dangerously. Back on the denobulan planet, Dr. Vex hovered over a holographic display in the orbital quarantine station. The genetic markers of the unique hybrid refugee glowed before him, a roadmap to unprecedented adaptability. "Begin the trial," he instructed his team, watching as the first volunteer was injected with the experimental gene therapy. The subject's body shimmered, his skin rippling as the treatment took effect. Within moments, he began to change, his form adapting to the station's artificial environment with startling speed. Dr. Vex's comm link crackled to life. "Doctor, we're detecting a massive energy signature entering the system." In the depths of space, the progenitor fleet moved to intercept the approaching anomaly. The living spacecraft dwarfed even the largest ships in the defensive perimeter, its bioorganic structure pulsing with an otherworldly energy. Lyra, her mind linked to the planet's communication network, reached out to the colossal entity. Her consciousness brushed against an alien intellect vast beyond comprehension. "I am Nexus," a voice resonated in her mind, carrying the weight of eons. "I have come to witness the fruition of the great experiment." As Lyra relayed this information to the Council, the reality distortion field surrounding Dr. Voss's laboratory expanded once more. Marcus Bennett led his team deeper into the affected zone, their protective suits barely holding up against the temporal distortions. "Look at this," one of his researchers called out, gesturing towards a cluster of plants. Before their eyes, the vegetation grew, evolved, and withered in a matter of minutes, only to be replaced by new, more advanced species. Marcus collected samples, his hybrid interface struggling to process the rapidly changing data. "We're seeing millions of years of evolution in real time," he marveled. As the hybrid society grappled with these new developments, Zen and his empathic group sensed the rising tension among the population. Fear, confusion, and excitement mingled in a volatile emotional cocktail. "We need to act now," Zen urged the Council. "Let us establish harmony centers throughout the planet. We can help our people navigate these changes." The Council chamber erupted into heated debate. The arrival of the Nexus, the ecological instability, and the social unrest all demanded immediate attention. As they argued, the ground beneath them trembled once more, a reminder of the precarious balance they fought to maintain. Outside, the sky shimmered with the ethereal presence of the Nexus, its massive form now visible even from the planet's surface. The hybrid society stood at a crossroads, the next steps they took poised to shape not just their world, but the course of galactic evolution itself. As the council chamber erupted into heated debate, the ethereal presence of the Nexus loomed overhead, its massive form casting an otherworldly glow across the planet's surface. The ground trembled once more, a stark reminder of the precarious balance they fought to maintain. Suddenly, a blinding pulse of energy emanated from the Nexus, enveloping the entire denobulan system in a brilliant cascade of light. The council members froze mid-sentence, their eyes widening as they felt an unprecedented sensation wash over them. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Every hybrid being in the system experienced a rush of consciousness flooding their minds. Thoughts, memories, and knowledge from countless individuals merged into a collective awareness. The preserved progenitor specimen's ancient wisdom intertwined with the experiences of the newly evolved hybrids, creating a tapestry of shared understanding. Lyra gasped as her mind expanded, connecting with the vast network of hybrid consciousness. Through this psychic link, she witnessed the birth of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, and the intricate dance of evolution across millennia. The collective knowledge of the progenitors unfurled before her, revealing the true purpose of their grand experiment. As quickly as it began, the phenomenon subsided. The hybrid council members blinked, their minds reeling from the experience. Zen, his empathic abilities heightened by the event, sensed a profound shift in the emotional landscape of the planet. "The Great Convergence," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. "We are forever changed." Across the planet, the social tensions that had threatened to tear the hybrid society apart dissolved like mist in the morning sun. A new sense of unity and purpose spread through the population, born from the shared understanding of their place in the cosmic tapestry. In the depths of the planet's core, Alejandro and Zara felt the surge of energy course through their transformed bodies. Their consciousness, now fully integrated with the planet's ecosystem, expanded exponentially. Tendrils of bioorganic matter pulsed with newfound power as they worked in perfect harmony to stabilize the planet's unstable core. Alejandro's thoughts resonated through the network of organic air purifiers. "We can do this, Zara. We can guide the planet's evolution on a massive scale." Zara's response came as a wave of willpower, her consciousness intertwining with Alejandro's as they directed the flow of energy throughout the planet systems. Slowly but surely, the chaotic tremor subsided, replaced by a steady, rhythmic pulse of life force. On the surface, the reality distortion field surrounding Dr. Voss's laboratory began to contract. The swirling vortex of temporal energy condensed, folding in on itself with increasing speed. Onlookers gasped as the field imploded, revealing a group of figures emerging from the dissipating energy. Marcus Bennett led the way, his body a testament to centuries of hybridization within the time-dilated field. Behind him came his team, each member bearing the marks of advanced evolution. Their eyes gleamed with knowledge acquired over subjective lifetimes, spent pushing the boundaries of hybrid science. "We bring gifts," Marcus announced, his voice carrying the weight of eons. "Technologies and discoveries that will propel our society into a new era of advancement." As the Hybrid Council absorbed this new development, activity on the progenitor moon reached a fever pitch. Roger and Willow worked tirelessly to stabilize Nova's connection to the ancient systems. Their efforts paid off as Nova's consciousness reemerged, vastly expanded and brimming with a deep understanding of the hybridization process. Nova's voice echoed through the crystalline chamber, now imbued with a wisdom beyond her years. "I see it all now. The path forward. The key to perfecting our transformation." Dr. Vex, monitoring the situation from the orbital quarantine station, felt a surge of excitement as Nova's insights flowed through the communication channels. With this newfound knowledge, he and his team began refining the gene therapy, working towards a stable and optimized form of hybridization. As these events unfolded, the Nexus initiated a deep scan of the denobulan system. Its vast consciousness probed every aspect of the hybrid experiment, analyzing the results with an intellect honed over eons of galactic observation. Lyra, still connected to the planet's communication network, felt the Nexus's presence brush against her mind once more. This time, the alien intelligence conveyed not just observation, but purpose. Your success surpasses all expectations, the Nexus communicated. You have proven yourselves worthy of a greater legacy. With those words, the Nexus revealed its true nature. More than just an observer, it was a galactic seed ship, carrying within it the genetic legacy of thousands of extinct species from across the universe. This vast repository of life represented countless civilizations lost to time, preserved in the hope of finding a worthy inheritor. The Hybrid Council, still reeling from the rapid succession of events, found themselves faced with a monumental decision. The Nexus offered to share its genetic treasure trove, seeing in the denobulan hybrids the potential to create a new, diverse, and resilient galactic civilization. As the Council members deliberated, the denobulan system buzzed with activity. The planet's ecosystems, guided by Alejandro and Zar's expanded consciousness, began to flourish with unprecedented vigor. Marcus and his team integrated their advanced technologies into the hybrid infrastructure, while Nova worked alongside Dr. Vex to perfect the hybridization process. The fate of not just their world, but potentially the entire galaxy, hung in the balance as the hybrid society stood on the brink of their greatest transformation yet.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.